So chapter 16, we're talking about the value, the three approaches to value we're going to learn. We're going to do some math. There's a lot of terms in here that you'll see on state exam as well. So let's start off with real estate. When we talk about real estate, we're talking about the market, the real estate market. What is a market? It's a place where goods are bought and sold, where people come together and they trade their goods, right? But real estate's an imperfect marketplace because you can't take the product to the people. You got to take the people out to the product. Make sense?
Yes.
So it's imperfect in that regard. So it takes a little more time to sell the product, right? Now, in order for land to have value, there's 5 attributes to it. One, it's finite in its supply. There's no new land being created. It's physically immobile. You can't pick it up and put it in a better neighborhood. It's durable. Technically, land will last forever. I mean, there are extreme situations. You drop a nuclear bomb on it, or it gets contaminated with something, then that could affect its value. It has its own unique characteristics, location, views, and so forth. And when you find that perfect location, views, and so forth, and you want to make that your home, that is known as situs or situs. You say, we're going to sit us right here, right? So the people's preference for location is situs. And 5, it's useful to people. In order for land to have value, it's got to be useful. So supply and demand. I'm sure you guys have all heard this theory before. A lot of this stuff we're learning in this chapter is simply theory at this point. It's theory that the appraisers use when determining value. Now, supply and demand is the amount of goods offered for sale within the marketplace within any given period of time. Real estate's value depends on also time. When are we talking about? Because as time changes, so does the value. You don't have to do anything in your house and the value can go up or down, right? Over time. So real estate's local, different markets, different marketplaces, right? So real estate's local in that regard. And depending on the time could have an effect on the value too. We get people all the time, they say, well, I remember in the peak of the market, I could have gotten this for my home. So that's how much I want for it. I'm like, well, then you should have sold it then, but that was a different market. We're in a different market now. Your home's not worth that anymore. This is what it's worth. Okay. Demand is the number of people willing and able to accept available goods at the price at any given point in time. So when supply increases, prices drop. When demand increases, prices will rise. So the word value, we already learned this, means 100%. And it's a monetary worth of goods, products, or services offered in the marketplace at any given time. Now, value could have a lot of definitions to it when you attach in words to it. It could be described as the present worth of future benefits. Okay, I can see that. Present worth of future benefits. How much are you willing to pay today for the benefits you'll get out of it tomorrow? Maybe a higher selling price, maybe the rents that you collect on it over the time, right? So value doesn't remain constant over time. It varies as the markets fluctuate. Now, I got a tip down here for you guys to take a class, not rely on any broker to teach you this stuff. This is a class for you guys that I highly recommend you take. It's under $100. It's their CMA workshop. Now, if they're not giving their CMA workshops right now, I suggest you take their seasonal workshops. But either way, the CMA workshop, I suggest that you guys take it. They're going to teach you how to value properties. Don't rely on your broker for that. I mean, getting taught by a group of appraisers is better than getting taught by a broker who may not be good at valuing properties to begin with, right? So here's a link I provided for you, ottawa.com, OTTEAU.com. Make that clickable. Yeah. So this is a class taught taught by a group of appraisers. I put that here for you. I highly recommend it. I got no affiliation with them, but it's an excellent class to take. I'm going to show you some of their support materials throughout this class as well. I think I may have already given you a little teaser on them before in the past for their CMA workshop.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, they have a reference guide for making adjustments for values on based on different criteria. And they give you a bunch of these guides, everything from here's one that I'm showing you from 2015 that I have here laying around. How you make adjustments for different prices and different property ranges. It doesn't go by neighborhood, it goes by price. I mean, obviously the higher price homes are probably going to be in better neighborhoods, right? So that's a given. You don't have to go based on what's a good neighborhood. You know, I mean, a good neighborhood's reflected in what people are willing to pay for it, right? And the CMA workshop also has, let's see, they also have they got a bunch of little guides here. Here's another guide that they give for features in different in urban areas. How do you make adjustments for New York City views, direct view of the city or the waterfront? That could definitely impact the value of a property. And as you could see here, you know, based on the prices, they don't even go to that 250,000 price range. They're just starting at that 400,000 price range when you got those kinds of things. And parking, terraces, you know, these things become very important when we're dealing with properties that are in urban areas. You know, parking may be at a limit, maybe limited here. All right, so let me close out this one. Let me keep the other guide open for us because we're going to bounce back and forth to it a little bit. Let me show you it a little bit. So situs is the people's preference for location. You know, when searching for a property, you want to find that perfect location for your house, right? And once you find that perfect location where you want to plant your roots, you say, we're going to sit us right here. Now, that's the people's preference for location, 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 right? Those three most important factors when determining value, or that could affect value. So where's it located? Is it conveniently located? Does it have pretty views? I mean, location and various factors could play a role in its importance due to its location. I mean, do you want to have a property that's located under a highway? I don't know. Do you? By the way, I got another video that I pulled out the other day. Remember we were talking about water rights, air rights, and all that good stuff, the different types of property rights. Mm-hmm. That was way back already, right? The property rights. I want to take a look, see if I know I'm pretty sure I put it up on YouTube. I know I put it on our Facebook page, but let me check our YouTube page. Give me 1 second here. These things can affect your value too. Somebody else got air rights over it, right? Or subsurface rights or mineral rights in your property. That could affect your value, right?
Hey, do you want?
Hold on. Just trying to pull up a video really quick. Just give me 1 sec here. Gotta go through my library. So I hope I got it uploaded. If I didn't, I'm gonna upload it right now. You guys see this video. At least I know I got it on Facebook. So let me pull up another window in Facebook and show it to you. May have put it on our Instagram page too. Whatever. Okay, I'm not gonna start looking all over the place for this right now. I will post it up there at some point in time. And it looks like I got to put those things on our website too. Apparently I don't have all of our links up there for Instagram. It doesn't look like. Okey-dokey. Oh yeah, it's been a while since I posted something up here. Okay, back to our slideshow. So situs is people's preference for location. There are four economic characteristics to have value. Value is the present worth of future benefits arising from the ownership of real property. So for a property to have value, it must have these attributes, thus: demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. Demand is a need or desire by someone who can afford it and is willing to buy it. Utility is that the property serves a human need or a desire. Scarcity means that it's limited in its supply. And transferability, meaning that the ownership should be easily transferable from one person to the other. So now that you know that, which one of these four economic characteristics to value would apply to a situation where a builder just built a complex down the street with 500 new homes? And I want to buy a building, if I could get the city to give me a permit to put up a combination laundromat convenience store.
In the building, or like?
Well, they built 500 new houses. They built a complex with 500 new houses.
Okay.
I want to buy a piece of property down the street. If the city will give me a permit to put up a combination laundromat convenience store, which one of these four economic characteristics would most apply to my situation?
Utility.
Serving a human need or desire. Utility, yeah, because you got 500 homes there. People are going to need a laundromat and a convenience store, right?
Right.
There we go. That's it. You don't got to read into it any further than that. Pretty simple to understand, right? Or not. So what's an appraisal? It's an unbiased estimate or opinion of value made by a licensed person called an appraiser. And they perform this service for a fee. So that is what an appraiser is. So we can never call our estimates of value that we give to the public an appraisal, right? We give what CMAs, right? Or a BPO. CMAs we give to the public, BPOs we usually give to banks or lending institutions when they ask us for a valuation of a property. But we must never, ever, ever, ever call it
Appraisal.
an appraisal. Correct. I just located that video I wanted to show you. I'm just gonna put it up to YouTube real quick. So market value. What is market value? Market value is a price. What is market value? That's a good question. It's a price that a ready, willing, and able buyer who's not forced to buy will pay a seller who is not forced to sell, provided that there's no undue pressure. You know, they need to sell, otherwise their property is going to get foreclosed on, as an example. All right. So a ready, willing, and able buyer would be somebody who doesn't need to purchase because they need to move for their job to get their kid in the new school system. Market value is based on neither party being under a stressful, forced on situation that's onto them. You know, in order for a property to have market value, it had to have been exposed to the market for a reasonable length of time. It's the most probable price that the property will bring based on certain factors. You know, what recent similar homes have sold for in the neighborhood recently. It's based on supportable evidence that could show that these properties are comparable. The property's bought with cash or its equivalent, like a mortgage loan. And the buyer and seller are acting without undue pressure. Got to get the kids, got to move for my job. I got to get the kids enrolled in a new school. Got to sell because I'm in danger of foreclosure. You know, when both parties are selling on their own and there's no outside pressures on them that would affect the normal sale process and valuation, that would be market value. You got to factor that into it as well. Now, market value also assumes that it is an arm's length transaction. So what is an arm's length transaction, you may be asking? Are you asking?
Yes.
Yes.
There we go. It's right here at the bottom. It's a transaction between parties who are relatively strangers to one another, meaning that they're not close to each other. Because what are the odds that if you're selling your house to your brother or sister and you love them and there's no family drama, that you're going to give them a break on the price?
No,
Really?
not happening.
Not going to give your brother or sister a break on the price, even though
No, I'm just
no
kidding.
family drama, you love them?
I would.
All right. But you know, most people, they try to get the most money they possibly can. But you know, when you're dealing with your relatives and there's no family drama, say you love each other and all that, you're probably not going to be trying to rake them over the coals to get squeeze every last penny out of them, right? So usually the situation in most sales is the seller tries to get the most they can and the buyer tries to get it as cheap as they can. You know, that's an arm's length transaction, and wherever they end up, well,
So they're basically looking out for their own interests.
Yes, yes, yes. There's no outside factors that are affecting the value of this sale. Okay. That's what this whole list is that we went over here. And then in addition that the parties involved in the transaction aren't of a relation to each other. Okay. Because if they are, you can't really use that as a comparable, that property as a comparable, because there was something that could have affected its value. So an example of an arm's length transaction, brother sells the home to his sister, okay? Well, the examples I just gave. So let's, you guys have any highlights?
No.
Okay, page 274, top of the page, highlight, it's commonly agreed that land possesses these 5 attributes, put a highlight down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Can you repeat that, please?
Top page 274. You're gonna highlight the first line. And then you're gonna highlight just the numbers in that list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are the 5 attributes? Dust. You can write dust next to that too. Dust. Although they got it in a different order here. Maybe that's an acronym I could submit to the book manufacturer here to add that in. 4 economic characteristics to value. Page 274.
Dust. You said to add dust on 274 too,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. Yeah, see right there next to that numbered list, that's basically the 4 attributes to value, dust, except they got it in a little different order, right? It should be demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. They have, wait. Sorry, that's the wrong thing here.
At 274, it said.
Yeah, that's the
It's
5. I'm sorry, that's the 5 attributes to value. That's not the 4 economic characteristics to value. That was on the right side of page. That's on the right side. That's on page 275 at the top of the page. I'm sorry, got the 2 slides confused here. All right.
Thank you.
So go down to the bottom of page 274. In the very last paragraph, we're going to highlight the location of a particular property and people's preference for a particular location, and then highlight the word situs or situs. Okay. Then the next thing on page 275 at the top of the page there. All right, they already have that written there. For property to have value in real estate market, it must have 4 basic economic characteristics. Dust, highlight that. And then just highlight demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. You don't need to study them to remember them. You just need to understand them, okay? DUST could be an acronym that in case they do give it to you on exam, which one of these are the 4 or which one of these are not one of the 4 economic characteristics to value. Demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. And then just understanding what they mean. Demand, okay, well, it's got to be demanded. Somebody's got to desire it, right? Utility has to serve a purpose. That's what a utility is, right? Scarcity means if it's scarce, that means there's not much of it. If it's in abundant supply, what does that do for value?
It brings it down.
Brings it down. And transferability. Can you transfer ownership easily? If not, who's going to want to buy it, right? So that could have an effect on the value. So the appraisal is an unbiased estimate of value by a licensed appraiser. That's a profession that's required for giving them. So we kind of discussed market value here next. And so we will highlight on the second line at the end of the line, we're going to highlight an appraisal is an estimate or opinion of value based on supportable evidence and approved methods. An appraiser is an independent person trained to provide that unbiased estimate of value. And then in the next paragraph, we highlight the market value of real estate has been defined as the price that a ready, willing, and able buyer who's not forced to buy will pay a seller who is not forced to sell after the property has had reasonable exposure to the market. Now, all the following things are taken into consideration by the appraiser when determining the market value. Because what is market value? It's a value that's applied to the property based on supportable evidence. So basically we could search the MLS or we could search the public records for properties just like this one that have recently sold in the neighborhood. And then we make the adjustments for the differences in those properties to try to narrow down its value. That's market value. We're estimating that this property should sell for a certain value because another property that's just like it recently sold for that value. It's common sense. It tells you that, if you got two things that are exactly the same, they should sell for the same price, right? If it's at the same time, reasonably same point of time, right?
Good, yes.
Okay. So basically that's what we do when we're selling real estate. We're trying to help people determine their market value. We as real estate agents do, so do appraisers. They try to help people determine the market value of property based on the supportable evidence, which we call comps. The comps, which is short for comparables, are comparable properties that are very similar. Now, it's hard to find properties that are exactly the same that have recently sold. So usually we find ones that are just comparable, and then we make adjustments for the differences, which is what this CMA workshop is that I was telling you about that I got here on the screen now. It's telling you about these, how do you make adjustments for the differences in these houses? Like, what if one house has an extra bathroom? How much more does that make it worth? Well, let's see, an extra full bath in a house that's in that $250,000 price range, or are we looking in a $400,000 price range home? Well, if it's a $400,000 price range home and it has an extra full bath, it's 2.5% of the home's value, or $10,000 if it's $400,000.
Dang, that's a lot. Okay.
Let's say it's a $300,000 home. Well, that's above 250. And so that's in this area, in this range. So it's 2.5% of the home's value. So if the home is $300,000, how much more would that home have sold if it had an extra bath?
$7,500.
$7,500. There you go. It's not hard, right? That's how we make the adjustments for the differences.
Okay. And this is in that class, right? In the auto class?
Yeah, the OTTEAU, Ottawa, I believe it's pronounced. I could be mispronouncing that, but doing my best. All right.
Do you have to be licensed?
No, you don't have to be licensed to attend the course. But if you are licensed, you could get CE credits for that class.
Oh, okay.
I think they give you 3 elective credits for taking that class.
Okay.
Okay. And the class is definitely worth it, even if they didn't give any CE credits, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
They don't, they got the one that's the CMA workshop. But if they're not given that CMA workshop at a given point in time, I suggest that you also take the other class that they have, which is a seasonal workshop, because it also gives this information and it touches on CMAs. It's just not centrally focused on how to price properties.
Okay.
Okay.
So I have a question. So like adding a man cave to a house that's $400,000 is 12,000 increased value.
Oh, man cave, you're never going to say that in an advertisement though, are you?
That's what it is. It's usually in the basement.
Yeah. But you're not going to call it that in an ad, right?
No, of course not.
Only when you're talking to people.
Correct. Maybe bachelors. Oh wow.
So yeah. So basically, if the basement is finished, okay, well, is it a full basement or a partial basement? Is it a walkout basement? Well, let's just say it's a finished basement and the house is in the $400,000 price range. That'll add 1.9% to its value, or 7,500. Now, if it's a full basement, that'll also add another 12,000. So 12,000 plus the 7,500. Boom, boom, boom.
Okay. Oh wow.
Okay. So solar panels, remember we went over this, some of this stuff before. Solar panels make your home worth more or less and all that stuff. Double glazed windows, energy systems. Oh, look, they're even adding that stuff in here. So energy systems, for special energy systems. Okay. Now these numbers change each year. You can't go by these numbers to try to determine your value of the home today. This was back in 2015. You got to go by it in different years. Now, energy systems, different kinds of energy systems, let's see, multiplied by monthly savings by 90. Okay. And then you get the value, how much they would add to the value of the home. All right, with solar panels, it depends on how much energy they generate, how much, there's a couple factors that would play into it. So they would give you one of these sheets that have something a little bit extra into it, and they dictate notes to you when you're at these classes, which is pretty good. Well, we'll come back to this. We'll bounce back and forth a little bit. Oh, but what I wanted to do first is, hold on. Got that video uploaded for you. Wanted to show you guys that real quick. Real quick. Nothing's real quick apparently online here. Come on, YouTube. So I found a video that I'm going to add to our slideshows here about air rights. You know, I think that was chapter 5 or 6 that we went over air rights. So I found this this video that I think is kind of funny. And why can't I click on it yet? There we go. Check this out.
Sorry, I haven't been around in a while. And again, I'm sorry about the abbreviating your dates on the headstone. That's the numbers are like $100 a pop, and apostrophes were free. So. Wait, looks like it's a little close, isn't it? What are you gonna do? Because they sold the air rights to the cemetery. They sold air rights to a cemetery. It's pretty okay water slide though. It's called Erie Canals. Guess it's deemed that it's haunted. Something. Look out!
All right. I seen that clip in a movie I was watching the other day. Silly movie. but nonetheless, they're talking about air rights, and it was
In the
a,
next 67,
it was an interesting depiction that they gave there. That the they sold the air rights above a cemetery so that they could put that water park slide above it. And then they gave it a theme that it's eerie because it's going over a cemetery. Anyway, could that happen? I don't know, but I thought it was funny as hell. I don't know. That's real estate humor though. So there you go. None of you are laughing, so I guess you didn't take any enjoyment in that. So moving on. So market value, both the buyer and seller have to be well informed about a property's assets, defects, as well as its potential in order to properly assess its property, the property's value. So how could you do that if you don't know that, what's wrong with it or what the property's potential is? Let's see. Amazon's going to be building a warehouse in the neighborhood. Is that going to raise the values in the area or put them down? Probably. All right. Now, real estate, the business of value. Here's a nice little guide for you guys to have some understanding that I put together. This is not in the book, but cost relates to the past. Price relates to the present, and value relates to the future. We help people determine market value, right?
Right.
We're trying to estimate what it's going to sell for.
Right.
Does the buyer care how much the seller paid for an improvement in the past?
No.
And they're going to base the price that they offer on it based on that? No. So cost usually has very little to do with the actual selling price. See, we have market costs, market price, market value. Cost has little to do with the price or the value for that matter. In a perfect world, market price and market value are one and the same. We as real estate agents and appraisers help people determine the values of their homes or properties based on supportable evidence. And if we do a good enough job, our estimate of value, that market value, should be what it eventually sells for, the market price. Okay. Let's highlight under market value there that the market value of real estate's been defined as the price that, oh, we already did that, didn't we? Okay. And then the market value also assumes its most probable price the property will bring. Payment must be made in cash or its equivalent. Both the buyer and seller have to act with that undue pressure. Okay, we already went over this list. At the bottom of that list, we're going to highlight an arm's length transaction is one between relative strangers, each of whom is trying to do the best for themselves. Now, value versus price, we're going to highlight market price, on the other hand, is what the property actually sells for. It is the selling price. And then under market value versus costs, on the first line in the second paragraph, we're going to highlight often cost does not equal market value. It could have a slight effect on the value or the price of the property, but usually not much. And look, let me show you the example there. How much would you guys would estimate that it costs to install a pool, an in-ground swimming pool on a, let's just say your average $250,000 home? How much does a in-ground swimming pool cost to install?
7,000. 5,000.
In ground, probably more than that.
Those are expensive. I used to work for a pool
Yeah.
On a 250, I mean, it's like
50,000.
company. And money pits.
Hmm.
The
Yeah,
equipment itself is like 5,000.
It's,
The cost of an in-ground pool?
yeah, to get an in-ground pool installed, I mean, digging the hole and pouring it and waterproof.
Maybe 10,000.
It's
not
50,000.
You're probably looking closer to 15, 20 grand.
Hmm.
Okay. But look at this in-ground pool here. Look how much it pays back for a home in that $250,000 price range. It increases the value of that home by 1.6%, or maybe about 4 grand.
You have to spend a lot of money.
I have a question. Do you think now because of everything that happened with COVID, it may increase the value of a house even more?
So that people can enjoy their homes more. Well, you know what? We get to here. Let's even forget about COVID for a moment. Let's pretend this never existed. Okay. Do you think in-ground pools make a home worth more or less?
I would have thought more.
Doesn't it depend, kind of?
Depends. Yeah, I was gonna say it depends on what the buyer is looking for.
In
Like
New
sometimes they don't want an in-ground pool.
Exactly.
All right, that's a different topic. So you guys are answering just the way I expected you to. You're talking about two different things. I'm talking about value. You guys are talking about desirability.
So value, I'd say yes.
So value, though, and desired features are two different things. So you get some people that are saying, well, what if we don't want a pool? I mean, it's an additional insurance cost. It's going to raise your insurance. It's a liability. Your taxes are going to go up. Well, then that house isn't for you that got a pool, though.
right.
But for somebody who wants that pool, they're most definitely willing to pay more to get it. You see what I mean? How one thing is desirability. It doesn't depend. Pools always make the home worth more. Always. All right. It's just to who does it make worth more? So we're just limiting our options of who the buyers are going to be, though, because some people don't want pools. But the people who want them, they're willing to pay more for them. Okay. So we just got to get ourselves the right buyer there that's looking for that feature in the home. Okay. Yeah.
Quick question. Thinking about kind of just tying some of the things together about loans, about the value,
Well,
the appraisal.
The cost that person put into that in-ground pool, maybe they paid 15, 20 grand. Are they getting all that money back for the cost that they put in?
No.
No, definitely not.
No.
But look, most improvements that you put in a house do not pay back 100%. The ones that pay back the most are maybe kitchen remodels, adding, kitchen remodels, adding a bath, bedrooms. You're talking about adding square footage. Yeah, but how much it costs versus how much more it's going to increase the value of the property. I don't know if you're going to get it all back. We're talking about the most bang for your buck improvements that pay back percentage wise the most of the money back. I would say the kitchens, definitely. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but you're starting to get on that track. So I just wanted to still address that.
Oh, no, that's fine, Victor. I was gonna ask from what I've been hearing in a couple conversations, I heard this market right now, houses are well, first of all, houses aren't staying long and they're selling for people are overbidding.
Yeah.
Where it is so because of that, right? I'm just guessing or assuming some of those offers are obviously maybe higher than the value of the house. Right. So are they paying out of their pocket because they wouldn't give them a loan?
Okay, so if somebody's making an offer, like what are you asking? How are property market values going up?
No, I'm just saying in this market because there's so much demand, the supply, there's not that much supply.
How are they justifying? How are they?
That's
Okay,
because of the interest rate.
you're basically saying the prices are going up like crazy, So in order for those prices to go up, people have to be offering more. If they're offering more, it can't be justified. How do they getting the loans to do it, or do they got to pull the money out of their pocket? That's kind of
Yes.
what you're asking, right?
Yes.
Well,
Or are they paying in the pocket?
what is market value depending on? A lot of factors. Didn't we go over a bunch of theory here? Supply and demand. Does that factor into it? So if the demand is dwindling, but I'm sorry, if the demand is high, but the inventory is dwindling, what's that going to do for value?
Not good.
Huh?
For value?
For value, yeah. If the supply
Increase.
is down, but the desire for the properties is up,
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's when it increases.
it's gonna the value is gonna go up too. So it's not just what somebody's willing to pay, because a lot of times people aren't buying cash; they're getting a loan to buy a property. The appraiser takes into consideration the market curve. Okay, you know how we hear all these idiots talking about COVID and the curve. You know, we learned so much about the curve, right? And now we learned that a lot of that Cuomo stuff was false numbers, made up numbers about the curve, right? But oh damn it! Why did this thing keep closing on me? Sorry, I had my whiteboard open and it closed. The real estate is a cyclical market. It goes up and it goes down. Remember, we had it was going up for years, and then 2006 we had the market crash, and then it went down, kept going down for years. Now we're seeing the rebound on it, right? As the economy improves and other factors go into play, where people are getting their jobs back and all that. That started increasing the value and demand for the properties again. However, we got hit by COVID. That kind of gave us a gut punch, right? Well, kind of. It's a unique situation. You would figure, you know, with the economy, the way that it was starting to spike and all the jobs coming back to the U.S. and everything, right? We're going through a weird situation right now, because with the COVID over there and the shutdowns, why are we still seeing an increased demand for the homes? Well, we're seeing a lot of problems and issues in social issues and all kinds of other factors that are going on too. We had a presidential election that was going on that was very unique. A lot of factors pertaining to that. We've had a lot of these protests, for lack of a better word, going on that scared the people out of New York. Where are they going to go though? They still work there, but they don't want to live there. The values in New York are getting killed. You know, if as crime spikes, you want to raise your family in an area with a high crime area where the murder rate's going through the roof and robberies and rapes and all that stuff's going up? Most people don't. So what do you think that's going to do to the property values?
Bring it down.
That's going to bring them down. All right. So people are bailing out of New York, especially now. You got politicians there that they're like, you know, we're going to raise taxes. They're doing things that defy common sense. Why would you raise taxes when people are moving out of town because it's unsafe and we're jobless because you're keeping the economy shut, you know? And now you're announcing you're going to raise taxes. People are like, we're getting out of Dodge. You know, we're moving down to a state that's more friendly, that's got jobs, that's open, that allows people to work. You know, you're seeing people going to Florida and Texas and such. But you get some people that are trickling over here right next door into New Jersey, right? Hey, we're a lot cheaper compared to New York real estate. So even though its prices are going up, it's a lot more affordable than what they're paying there in New York, right? So that's another factor to take into consideration. There's a lot of weird stuff that's going on in the current market right now. But we're seeing a lot of these properties. Who's buying them? Who needs to stay in the area that's moving, that's not just getting the hell out of here and going to Florida or Texas or Georgia or the Carolinas? I mean, I got friends that are moving now too. You know, the doctors and nurses, they're doing killer business right now, right? There's a demand for them. They're recruiting them out of California,
Yeah.
you know, which is strange, but they're recruiting them from California, which their economy is crappy, so crappy they're talking about recalling their governor. So, do politics play a role in real estate too?
Yes.
As you could see it happen if you open your eyes, you know, and you're not looking at it from a partisan lens from the left or the right. If you just look at what's going on and the politics, you know, like they're recalling a governor right now for so many bad mistakes that this guy has done, from handling COVID issue to the shutdowns to the tax increases to the, you know, stay at home orders, and then he's going out and violating them, you know. You're seeing the same stuff happening in New York, you know. All these things are driving people out. They do. And those are people that share the same political philosophies as those politicians. That they're still like, when it hits them in the pocketbook, they make decisions that's best for their families. All right. They may tell you the rhetoric, the politics that is one thing, but when it hits them in the pocketbook and in their lifestyle and what they're accustomed to, they're going to make changes accordingly. Okay. And you could see that just by the real estate. Just look at the real estate. You can see what's going on. So the real estate markets are historically cyclical. They go up, they go down. Right now we're going back up in that swing. And sure, sometimes people are willing to pay more, but usually not more than market value out of their own pocket, because the bank's not going to lend them that money. But the appraisers will take into consideration the curve of the market and the demand, and that could play into their valuation of the property. It's the activity of the market, so that could have an effect on it, absolutely. And so it's not that the homes are not appraising. They will appraise. You may get some people that the homes won't appraise if they're going up ridiculously with their offer prices, because, you know, hey, let's call it what it is. Sometimes people get into that eBay of a bidding frenzy, right? Look, here's the reality of it. Here's the way the homeowner sees their house. Looks like they got the castle, right? This is the way the real estate agents look at it. Not quite the castle. Come on, dude. You got to think about reality. And this is the way the appraiser looks at it, which is the only one that matters in that picture. The appraiser, because the bank's not going to lend their money based on what the realtor says or what the homeowner wants. They're going to base it off of this unbiased estimate or opinion of value from an independent third party that we call an appraiser. Okay. Sure, sometimes if somebody wants to bid a bidding war and they go up a little bit too high and it doesn't appraise, what are your options now to get that house?
You gotta put in.
Pull out money out of your pocket to make up for the difference, or ask the seller to lower the price.
Yep.
Right? Bank's not going to lend you more money than that house is worth, what an appraiser says that it's worth. And they base that off of comparables. Because the bank wants to be secure that if you fail to make your payments, that they could foreclose on you and they could turn around and resell that property to get all their money back. That's basically what they're looking at here in this picture. So market value is an estimate based on those comps. Market price is the selling price. In a perfect world, market value and market price are one and the same. And cost is in relation to the improvements or the that have been done in the past by the owner. And they have little to do. Sure, they can increase the value a little bit, but as you could see, many improvements, you don't get 100% of that money back. So even though the seller is crying, woe's me, this cost me so much to put in. Buyer don't care about how much you put down, how much you needs to get. They just care about what it's currently worth when determining their offer. So turn the page. Highest and best use is the most profitable use that the property can be used for, or a use that'll be in demand in the reasonably near future would be its highest and best use. So let's highlight that on page 276. The most profitable use to which a property can be adapted, or a use that's most likely to be in demand in the reasonably near future, is its highest and best use. And in that same paragraph, I want you to highlight the term amenity. Do I have that coming up on any slides? Amenity. Let me add that to this slide. Actually.
So like an amenity would be, for instance, you live in Montana, it's just using as an example, it's cold, you have heated bathroom floors.
Yeah, that would be nice for your toes, right? Or a heated bathroom seat where your tush doesn't freeze when you go sit on the toilet, right? And you pop up like sitting on an ice cube.
Yeah, my cousin lives in Alaska, so she has heated floor, she has a heated garage because it gets so cold there.
And where's she getting her water from? I know that's an issue in Alaska, right? Where not everybody is on public water. Most people are not, so they need some sort of a catch basin for their getting their water, right? As well as the status of their septic systems they have to be maintaining, right? You got indoor plumbing or an outhouse? Yeah, it's a real thing there in some of these off the grid areas, right?
Well, she sold it. She's moving. She just bought a house in Texas.
Moving to a warmer climate, you know. Plus they're seeing the writing on the walls. Once again, Alaska, a huge part of its economy is in the fossil fuel business.
Yeah.
Right. As a matter of fact, everybody that's a resident in Alaska gets a check every year. You know, from the oil companies. They're getting their share of the profits. Right.
She gets a check every year. Well, she was every year that she was living there because she worked for British Petroleum. Yep. So she was always out. That's exactly what she did. So. Well,
even if she's not, anybody who's a resident that lives there will get a check every year.
Yeah.
You know, now you're seeing all the politics on it now that we're shutting down, no more drilling or no more exploration on federal lands or across the lands. We shut down a Keystone pipeline, which is pulling the oil from it's just transporting it from Alaska to our refineries down in Texas and Texas and the Louisiana area, right? It's the safest way to transport that is by a pipeline, and it creates tens of thousands of jobs. Well, political decision because Trump passed allowed it. You know, Biden comes in. It's purely a political decision. He kills thousands of jobs, tens of thousands of jobs. You think that fossil fuel is still not going to get transported across our country? It sure will. It's just going to be coming across railroad right now, which is more dangerous. You know, just ask the governors of the states where they had that train crash a couple of years ago, and the explosions, and you want that in your neighborhood where all those oil and everything is spilling all over if a train derails. You know, it's a lot more safer having it through a stationary pipeline than it is through a moving vehicle like that. But anyway, so impact that that's going to have on the fossil fuel industry there in Alaska is also going to affect a lot of layoffs and people having to need work. So, you know, like you said, she's in the oil business. It may not have affected her yet. So she may have just done a transfer, or I'm not sure what her situation is there, but she's probably looking at the writing on the walls, reading the tea leaves, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So as you could see, people make decisions based on what affects them, right? And real estate is the leading indicator in that. You know, when people start looking for houses, you get an idea where the economy is going in these certain areas, right? So an amenity is a tangible or intangible. We're going to highlight an amenity is a tangible or intangible benefit to the property. Is a tangible or intangible benefit to the property. An example of that would be clean air, nice views, or convenience features, like pools, jacuzzi, heated floors, etc. All right, that would be an amenity. It's an extra that goes with the property, right? Some people who like wine may like a 100-bottle wine cooler in their in their kitchen. But are they going to get all the money back for that upgrade? Probably not. It'll be maybe more, it'll maybe be found desirable by a future buyer, but it's not going to make that property worth anymore. Maybe smidgen. They're not going to get all that money back. All right. So those are amenities. Substitution. We're going to highlight the principle of substitution states that the maximum value of a property tends to be set by the cost of purchasing another equally desirable property, a substitute property. So basically, nobody will pay more if the same can be had for less. Substitution is going to play a role in one of the 3 approaches to value that we're going to learn about when dealing with the cost approach to value. If you have 2 homes with the same location and attributes, the less expensive one will usually sell first. Because why would somebody pay more if the same can be had for less, right?
Correct.
So here's an example of substitution. If you got 3 homes on the market for sale, they're exactly the same in every way, shape, and form. One's going for 300, one's going for 305, one's going for 310. Which one would you buy? Which one would you make an offer on?
The cheaper one.
The cheaper one. Why would you pay more? Why would you pay 310 when you could get it the same thing for 300, right? So you make the offer on the one that's 300. They're all exactly the same. But you know what? You're not the only one that was thinking that. So somebody beat you to it. Now, which one would you buy?
305.
There you go. That's the theory of substitution. That's how it works. Now, somebody beat you to that one. Now, which one are you going to buy?
310.
310. However, now we got a situation of supply and demand. Got the last house available here. You think that one's not going to go for more than 310?
Yeah.
Probably will. So that's a good segue to the supply and demand as well. So let's highlight this principle states that the value of the property increases if the supply of such property decreases and the demand for it either increases or remains constant and vice versa. That is the theory of supply and demand. As I have written here on this slide here at the top. Now, conformity. Now, we're not going to highlight anything else for a while here, but so we could just focus on the slideshow for a few. Conformity tends to stabilize values a lot better if a neighborhood is conforming. If your property is conforming to the other homes in the neighborhood, you know, your house isn't the oddball sticking out like a sore thumb, or you got a commercial property in the middle of a residential area. That's non-conforming property to the neighborhood. Or if you got the biggest house in the neighborhood that's 10 times the size of everybody else, your property's non-conforming to the neighborhood. Your property's not going to maintain its value as well as those other homes do. It never pays to have the best, biggest house on the block. You'll never get your money back.
Yeah, there's a house like 3 streets over from me, and it's all of our houses look this. Well, all the houses look the same, but there's this. They just built this huge house, and I'm thinking to myself, who in the world is going to buy that? And like later down the road, I'm thinking later down the road, it's not, it's what you said, it's non-conforming.
Well, maybe they're doing like that guy around the corner from me that's using that 203K loan to buy that, to build that home that's 3.5 times the size of all the other homes over there, right? I mean, they'll get money for their home, but they're probably not going to get all their money back when they eventually go to sell it, because the neighborhood, it's not conforming to the neighborhood. You know, I had a builder once that tried doing this. He tried building a mansion in the middle of a middle-class neighborhood, or lower middle-class neighborhood. You know, the guy built a $740,000 home in a $300,000 neighborhood. You think he got his money for the house? That house actually drove him out of business.
Yeah.
Drove him to bankruptcy. First home that builder went in decided to build on his own, opened up his own construction business. Been in the construction business for years. Made a bad decision. He's like, yeah, but a couple blocks away, you got all these $1 million homes over here. I'm like, well, then you should have built a couple blocks away. You know, you're building in a neighborhood where they don't want this type of home, and all the surrounding homes in the neighborhood also don't conform. Your home's not conforming to the neighborhood. You never get your money back. You got the nicest house on the block, but you're not going to get all that money, because who wants to buy a mansion that's got that kind of mansion money in the middle of a cheap neighborhood, right? Not unless you got somebody that hit it big, that grew up in that cheap neighborhood, and now they want to show off a little bit, but they hit a lottery or they got rich all of a sudden. But short of that happening, it ain't going to happen, right? Okay, regression. We experienced this, you know, when the market was crashing and people were getting foreclosed on. You had a lot of boarded up homes in the neighborhood. What does that do to the home values for the people who are not getting foreclosed on? If all the homes in the neighborhood are getting boarded up,
Drives down the
it drives down the values of the other homes. But you're maintaining your home, though. Don't matter. All ships rise with rising waters, but they also drop with the falling waters, right? So it kind of works the same kind of a theory, regression, okay? Same thing with progression or progress. You know, when the values increase, all the homes in the neighborhood, but your house is crumbling and falling apart, you haven't done nothing to it, don't matter. Your property value is going to go up too, because all ships rise with rising waters. Even if yours is the crappiest ship out there, it's still going to rise with the rising waters, right? So the theory of regression and progression kind of work on that rising water theory, okay?
Mhm.
Anticipation. All right, so This one I usually am able to pull off on the class. I ask them, have you guys heard what they're building down the street over here? You know, it's kind of difficult to do when we're all in different places right now. But I usually tell people, hey, you know what we're building down? Have you guys heard what they're building down the street over here? And everybody's like, no, what? That's anticipation, right? So in anticipation of something happening and people thinking the values are going to be going up or the demand is going to be there for some reason, that could affect the values, can it? Look, in Alaska right now, you're just saying you got a cousin that's moving out of Alaska right now. You know, those oil leases and all that's the federal, you know, the government's decisions on what they're doing right now in anticipation of what's going to happen, you know, losing jobs and all that. She's getting out of Dodge, right? I mean, anticipation can play a role. Look, I live in Linden. Quite a few years back, they were talking about building a NASCAR racetrack here. You don't need to be a NASCAR fan to know that any town in the United States that's got a NASCAR racetrack in it, that town and all the towns surrounding it usually go up in value because NASCAR races, they got a big following. People will book hotels and those restaurants and shops. They'll be busy as hell when there's races going on. They'll get booked out a year in advance, hotels and restaurants and such, you know? So in anticipation of them building that NASCAR racetrack around the area where they were going to build it, which was basically marshlands, wetlands, you know, people couldn't dump their properties previously. All of a sudden they're tripping over each other to try to get it, you know? So anticipation of that NASCAR racetrack getting built, property values went up in the area.
I don't think noise will play a factor in that.
Nah, NASCAR fans love the noise.
Yeah.
You know, you think of hotels, you're not going to hear that in hotels. I mean, those things don't go on all night long. You know, they've got, you know, ordinances. That stuff stops at like they had that, used to have that in Englishtown, Raceway Park, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they used to go on pretty late, but, you know, they wouldn't be going off all night. You know, they'd maybe shut that down about 11, 12, something like that. There's nothing in the area. But then you see people starting to build homes in the area around the racetrack. Okay, whose fault was that? They knew that those races went on all night. They knew the announcers were going on. They knew the engines were revving and they could hear the sounds blaring, right? But all those people ended up building there anyway. People bought those homes that were built there. Now they're complaining. Oh, noise ordinance. So now the track had to shut down earlier and earlier and earlier. And now they just said, you know what, screw it. You know, the races having to shut down so early, and you know, we could only do flea markets every now and then. And you know what? It's not even paying for itself anymore. We'd probably be better off just selling it to a builder to build more homes here. They shut down the racetrack. All right. Increasing and diminishing returns. Here's what that theory is. Say that we got a kitchen here. You guys are watching me here. We got a kitchen. We got a house with a crappy kitchen. Here's the baseline. Okay. Here's my hand here. Here's the baseline. Now that kitchen, it's horrible. It's not usable. It really needs to be redone. So any improvement that we do, we're going to get our money back on it up to a certain point. But once you start going extreme with that makeover, your return starts diminishing. You're going to get less money back. That's what increasing. So your returns are going to start increasing up to a point. But then when you go overboard, your return starts diminishing. That's what increasing and diminishing returns are. So you don't want to go extreme with those makeovers. You know, like I said, not everybody needs a 100 bottle wine cooler in their kitchen. Contribution. I could give two of you $50,000 and say, here, go do improvements on this house. And you both do different types of improvements. How that money has been used can make an effect on the value, one more so than the other, right? Competition. Look, we don't just sell residential real estate. We also deal with commercial too, right? Now, if there's not a lot of competition in an area, but there's a demand for like to have a food store there, you know, what are they going to do? They're going to put in a McDonald's or something. What happens when they usually put in a McDonald's? Well, it usually goes in next door.
Burger King.
Burger King, right? Yeah, everywhere you see a McDonald's, there's a Burger King right next door, you know? So you see that happen a lot. So competition, they see that they start getting profitable, so the competition will start moving in there as well. But the thing is, you get too much competition that moves in, it becomes ruinous to your business, because now there's not enough business to support every business, you know? So competition can play a role in the value of a property as well. And change can too, because nothing remains constant. You know, change in local market conditions, jobs, politics, improvements, contamination, industry, weather, flood zones being remapped. You know, these things can all play a role in the valuation of properties. All right. So the three approaches to value. We got the sales comparison approach, which we help figure that out by doing a CMA, or an appraiser does. They do an appraisal, right? Using the comparative approach or sales comparison approach. Call it whatever you want. Just don't call it an appraisal, right? We have the cost approach to value and the income approach. We're going to learn about these three approaches to value. Let's start off with the sales comparison approach. So we're going to highlight the title on the bottom of page 277, three approaches to value. And then we're going to highlight on the second line, the sales comparison approach, the cost approach, and the income approach. You need to know the three approaches to value. Just boom, you need to know the slide. Sales comparison, cost, and income. Now we're going to dive into each one of these, and we're going to learn math problems for each one of these too.
Oh God, no.
Oh yeah. Don't worry, before we get into any math, we're going to first do all the terminology. So I want to finish the chapter first, and then we'll come back to do the math. So here's the slide for the sales comparison approach. This is the approach that's most often used by real estate licensees. It's the best approach for residential property valuation. It compares a subject property. The subject property is the property we're trying to determine the value for. So anytime familiarize yourself with that term, subject property. It's the subject of our conversation, right? That's what they mean when they say subject property. So it compares a subject property to similar ones that have recently sold, that we call comps. They're comparables. Comps is short for comparable properties that are similar in size, style, location, and amenity to the subject property that have recently sold. So now, because it's hard for us to find a property when we're looking up comps. It's hard to find comps that have that are exactly like the home that we're trying to put up there on the market for sale. So we have to make adjustments for those variations, for the differences. All right, and that's what we do in a CMA. That's what an appraiser does in an appraisal. They make those adjustments for the differences. I showed you that chart over here. Here's that chart again. This chart helps you determine the adjustments for the pricing differences for a half bath or a full bath or what have you. Look, there's a lot of other little factors here that you see in between the lines that we're not necessarily looking at right now. What about improvements? How long were those improvements done? You know, there's different mathematical formulas here for making adjustments for the age and condition and improvements and such. You get a lot out of this class. You really do. I mean, it's being taught to you by a group of appraisers. And they give you some other resources here. You see this vital.net. This is New Jersey tax. Here's a taxing system in Monmouth County that I gave you, and here's another one. Right. Just some of the resources that the appraisers use too. So basically, you make adjustments in the sales price of the comps for the differences. So you got to adjust for date of sale. You shouldn't really look further back. It's homes that have recently sold. So you shouldn't look back more than 3 months or 6 months. If you have to go back a year, you can, but then you have to start making adjustments for market changes and fluctuations as well. Because the market's got that curve. The market's been going up or down too. So what were the markets like when it sold a year ago? You know, you got to see has the market been rising? If so, you're gonna have to make an adjustment a little bit higher for that, or the market's been falling. You may have to deduct a little bit more. So the timeline plays a difference in the adjustments for the prices too. So you should look for homes as comps that's sold in the last 3 to 6 months. The location should be relatively the same. Keep it in the same municipality for sure. All right, because look, you could have 2 properties that have sold that you want as comps for your property you're trying to value. If they're in a different municipality, they pay different taxes. They got different school systems. They got different city services. You know, the values get affected hugely differently. Okay, so make sure that you're just using properties in the same municipality, even if you're on a property border of 2 towns. Now, it starts getting really tricky if you got a property that's in 2 towns. For that, I would say if you're really lost in that, you kind of just got to do your best guesstimate, or convince that seller to get an appraisal, pay for a damn appraisal if they don't want to trust our valuation. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've had that happen before, where you got a property that's actually in 2 towns or maybe even in 3 towns.
Yeah, freehold's one of them.
Freehold. I mean, it's really all over. I've had it. I've had homes like that in Newark. I've had one in Irvington. I had one in Livingston. I had one in where was it? Down south near Trenton. I've had them in a lot of towns. There's a lot of towns that you can come across that. Properties sit on the borders. They don't drive sometimes those property lines go through the backyard. Okay, that's not as hard to do than as if it goes right through the center of the house. The center of the house is in 2 towns. You get a tax bill every year from 2 cities. Where are you sending your kids to school? Well, their bedroom is in this town. I don't know how the hell they work that out, but it becomes difficult. That's for sure. But that's not the norm, so don't worry. Don't stress yourselves over that situation. Physical features should be similar, and you make adjustments if they're not. That's what this will help you out for. The living area. We do it by per square footage. If you notice, appraisers, they don't care about how many bedrooms you got. Even though they make note of it on the appraisal, they look more at square footage, the living area, the gross living area. And I could give you some good reasons for that. Look, I sold a lot of properties dealing in in some areas like either Elizabeth or Newark or Irvington, Perth Amboy. But I mean, you can really see it anywhere where people do this, where they think that they're making their home worth more. I've seen it in Franklin. I mean, I've seen it in a lot of places. Somerset, where let's just say that you got a house and here's the floor plan of the house, right? And I don't know, you got bedroom 1, you got bedroom 2 over here, you got maybe a bathroom, you know, you got yourself a kitchen, maybe you got a living room over here, a dining room. All right. And I don't know, so maybe you got another 3rd bedroom and something else over here. I don't know. But anyway, I've seen people before that they did this. This was a living room. They cut it in half and made it, let's see, a 4th and 5th bedroom. Does that make your house worth more? Because you got 5-bedroom house and the guy next door who's got the exact same house. It's got only 3 bedrooms?
Nope.
No, same square footage. All right? Because you the thing is, you got no living room now. Right? Yeah, think about that. So little things like that. That's why appraisers really don't care. They make notation of bedrooms, but really when it comes down to it, number of bedrooms really don't matter. It's the square footage of the house. And you know, what makes a bedroom? Can you have a bedroom in a basement?
Yes.
Really? It depends, only if it's grandfathered for it. And a lot of municipalities, they don't want you having bedrooms in the basement or living area in the basement if the window is not at least partially above grade, and there's another door, another way to get out.
Yeah, because when I lived with my mother in Atlantic Highlands, my bedroom was in the basement, but it was redone. It had its own living room, my own bedroom, and the windows were brand new. She had to do like all this stuff to the house.
A lot of people finish their basements and they put living areas in there, but do they do it legally is the question, you know? A lot of times municipalities, they don't want bedrooms in the basements. You know, they don't want people living in the basement. And a lot of times it's based off of safety issues. They don't want people getting trapped down there, you know, so they want, if you got the windows, are the windows above the grade? Are they above the ground level? Are they beneath the ground level? Is there a second door for them to get out, in and out? Or sometimes you got towns that they were grandfathered that they were allowed to have them down there, that living area. You know, if that's the case, then that's the case, you know. But otherwise, any newer homes, you know, in order to have living space in the basement now, if you got bedrooms in the basement and you're selling the house, are you claiming that you have bedrooms in the basement and claiming that you have a basement?
No.
No, it's one or the other.
It's one or the other.
Yeah.
A lot of people try to claim both. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you got bedrooms in the basement, then you don't have a basement as well. You got to have basement and that, or one or the other, like you were saying. All right. So the terms and conditions of the property sale, know when to make adjustments for the differences. Terms and conditions of the sale could affect it as well. You could have, if you're using comps, a property next door that recently sold, and it sold for a decent amount higher. But the reason being was because they also gave money back to the buyer for their closing costs. And for maybe improvements and such. If you don't know those terms and you're just looking at what it actually sold for, and and you're basing the value of a property next door based off of that sale price. Are you artificially inflating that price?
Yes.
You sure are. Because the only reason why their house sold for more is because they were giving some of that money back to the buyer for repairs and for their closing costs. It wasn't for the house. They didn't get to keep all that. So the actual sale, the actual house really was not valued at that. Okay, so we're going to have to learn is when properties have features, we have to make adjustments for the differences and condition. You know, for instance, if a house has an extra bedroom or not. You have on page 279, there's a little comparison chart. I kind of put one that's kind of sort of, but not really similar up here on this slide. The subject property is the one you're trying to determine the value for. So you're looking at all of its features. Then you should always have a minimum of 3 comparable properties when trying to determine the value of a home. You always have to have at least 3 comps, guys. Now, sometimes that could play to be difficult because you may not be able to find 3 comps that recently sold.
Sorry.
Yeah.
How recent should it be?
3 to 6 months. Like I said, if you're going to go back a year, then you may have to make adjustment for market change if there is huge changes in the real estate market. You know, property values going up or going down in value like crazy, then you have to make adjustment for time. What were the properties going for back then? Were they going for less or more than they're going for now? You're going to have to make an adjustment there. That's just another factor that would make it a little more difficult to determine a value when you're using as a comparable a property that's sold at a different point in time. So I'm going to use these little props I put together here for you guys. Subject property and a comparable property. That's a subject property and the comparable property. Okay. The whole idea here is when we're looking up comps, these are properties that have sold. These are not properties that are on the market. We don't care about properties that are on the market. We care about properties that sold because that we're trying to determine how much this house should sell for when trying to help the homeowner determine what the value of their home is. So we pick out properties that are of the same style, at least like the same architectural style or a close similar valued style. Okay. But if we find the same exact styles, pick them. So we got all Cape Cod style homes here. And you can see the subject property has 4 bedrooms. Comp 1 has 3. Comp 2 has 4. Comp 3 has 4. And you can see the sales price. Comp property 1 sold for $300,000, comp 2 for $315,000, comp 3 sold for $320,000. Now, if the only difference between these 2 houses is the number of bedrooms, how much should the subject property sell for? Well, if it's what we have to do is we got to try to determine what the value of 1 more bedroom would be and add that into the sale price of $300,000. And if we look at this little chart down here, I'm just giving you this. We're just making up these numbers right now. You're going to get this. You're going to learn this stuff through experience or taking one of those Ottawa classes. Let's just say in this area, the bedrooms, an extra bedroom's going for $5,000. So if this comparable property 1 had that 1 more bedroom and the only difference between it and the subject property was 1 bedroom there, how much should this house have sold for?
$305.
$305. If that was the only difference, then that house should have sold for $305. Simple, right? So wait, so what did we do here? If the subject property has a feature that the comparable property is missing, we have to figure out the value of that feature and add to its value to bring it up to the same level as the subject property. See, we're trying to bring it at the same level. If the comparable property is missing a feature, we got to add to its value to bring it to the same level. If the comparable property has a feature, the subject property doesn't, we have to determine the value of that different feature and subtract it to make it exactly the same. For example, if the subject property has 4 bedrooms and the comparable property had 5 bedrooms, what would you do? This is the only difference. Comparable property has 5 bedrooms, the subject property has 4. What do?
You subtract.
You're subtracting to bring the value of that feature of the bedroom to bring it to the same level as the comparable. What I'm trying to do here is I'm just trying to teach you guys to know when to add and when to subtract from a comparable's value. Okay. You're always trying to make the property the same, because comps out there are usually not exactly alike. So we have to make adjustments for the differences. So if the property that's sold is different than the one that we're trying to sell, we got to figure out the price that the price of that difference and either add it or subtract it to bring it to the same level. And that will help us make the adjustment to find the proper price. So as you could see here, we make adjustments for a lot of different things here. So let's do one property at a time. This property, we know 1 bedroom, well, that would be a 5,000. We're adding 5,000 to its price because it was missing a feature that the subject property has. So we're adding to its value there. The subject property has 2.5 baths. The comparable property has only 2. So if a half bath is valued at 2,500, we're going to once again be adding to its value 2,500. And if the comparable one has no garage, but subject property had 1 garage space, if it's estimated that a garage is $10,000, we would add 10,000. So now we add the 10,000 to the 2,500 to the 5,000. We do all the additions for all the changes, and that's $17,500 more that this home would have sold for. So it would have sold for $317,500 if we make all the adjustments that would make it exactly the same as this property.
Okay. And that adjustment is basically telling you what you need to sell the subject property for.
That's how much our estimate is.
That's what our estimate is what we're going to list it as.
Yep, that's our, well, it's up to the owner to determine what they want to ask for their property, but we're trying to convince them based on supportable evidence that we're showing here and how we determine those numbers.
Right, we're trying to give them a visual.
Yeah, this is the same thing that an appraiser is going to do.
Okay.
Okay, so we want to try to make these adjustments. See, a lot of agents, they don't even go through this. They just guesstimate the numbers and they say, here's your price range. Look, these are what the property sold for, 300 to 320. You're going to be in that price range. That's it. Okay, so a lot of agents just do that. They don't make all the fine tuning adjustments, and then they wonder why their list price to the actual sale price is so far off, or that the appraiser didn't appraise it for the offer that came in, you know, and they're shocked. Okay, well, get better at pricing. See, subject property 2 here, comparable property 2 sold for 315,000. Let's see, it has the same amount of bedrooms. Let's see, it's missing a half bath, so we add a half bath into its value, and that was the only difference in price. Then look, it should have sold for $317,500 as well, because that's the only difference between these 2 properties. Now, comparable 3 is a little bit different. It has the same amount of bedrooms, same amount of baths. It has an extra garage. So it has a feature that the subject property does not. And we know that the garage is valued at 10,000. So we're going to be subtracting that extra garage space's value from its overall sale price, giving it an estimated value of 310. So what is the price range that this house should sell in? Anywhere between 310 and 317.5. Okay. So we narrowed it down a lot further than 300 to 320. Right? Now, usually the differences that we're making are not going to be 2,500. We're making $5, $10s, $20,000 adjustments. Usually not these small of adjustments. I just want you guys to know when to add, when to subtract, when comparing, because usually on state exam, they're going to give you some kind of math problem. They'll tell you, here's the comps, here's the features. They don't give it to you in a chart. It's in a word sentence format, you know. So you got to pull out your scrap paper and write down, okay, comparable 1, comparable 2, comparable 3, here's the features. And then you're basically making a chart like this. And then you got to add and subtract for the differences. And tell them how much that house should sell for. Once again, cost relates to the past, price relates to the present, and value relates to the future. And so here's that little image I gave you a little while ago. The only one that matters here is the appraiser's estimate of the value. Now, cost approach is based on substitution. So on page 279, at the bottom of the page, highlight the title, Cost Approach. And highlight the first sentence. Is most helpful in the appraisal of special purpose buildings, such as schools, churches, and public buildings. Quite frankly, I like my slide to study from better. Cost approach is also known as the appraisal by summation. Sometimes that's an exam question in itself. It's used to determine the value of special purpose and unique, one-of-a-kind buildings or public properties that may not have comparables or generate income in the normal fashion, like a school, a church, a library, or city hall even, or a custom unique home. So this approach is most often used by appraisers, not by salespersons, due to the knowledge that's required in order to figure it out.
Now, when you say school, sorry, I just want to make sure. So like, if you live, I don't know if you're familiar with this area, but let's say you live in the
Say I had a public school and that public school shut down.
school.
It's not open anymore. It's closed.
Okay.
It's been closed for years.
Okay.
How would you value that property?
Okay, we'll go down. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, we can. Okay.
How would you value a church? Are there comps, many comps to compare it to in the neighborhood of churches that have recently sold?
Right.
Yeah, no. You can't use the income approach because most places don't generate income like churches do either. Churches based off of donations and such, right?
A church would be considered commercial, right? Would it be residential?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not residential. Although they may have their rectory attached to it, which is a separate house that the pastor would live in and their family perhaps would live in, right? Depending on the religion, I guess. But yeah, it would be considered commercial. So how would you determine the value of a church? Let's use that as an example here. Well, let's look at the process of the valuation using the cost approach. You could see why they refer to it as the appraisal by summation. We got to sum it up. We got to do some math. Okay. So once again, we as real estate agents will never do this in real life. You'll never do this. We don't get the knowledge to. But on exams, you'll get a state exam question that you get a math problem on this, the state exam. And don't worry, I'll show you how to do it. But let's see. So how do you value a church? Well, first you got to look at the land that church is sitting on in this neighborhood. How much would it sell for if it was vacant and put to its highest and best use? Well, what would the highest and best use be? It's probably in a residential neighborhood, but not necessarily. Okay. So put to its highest and best use, how much would that land sell for today? So that's the first step. Then you got to determine, you got to estimate the costs to build that church, to do all the improvements, you know, running the gas line, sewer, water, build the structure, etc. Now, there's two approaches that an appraiser can do. They could take the replacement approach or the reproduction cost approach. You see, do I have that in the, yeah. Let me just skip to the next slide here for a second that explains these two. So reproduction approach would build exact duplicate of the building that's there. Replacement cost approach would build another structure that serves the same purpose, but it's not necessarily exactly the same. Yeah, you know what? Appraisers use this approach also for insurance claims sometimes. Say your kitchen, you had a fire in your kitchen. You had a fire in your house, right? Anybody here got a high-end kitchen in their house? You know, custom countertops or expensive or fancy countertops and cabinetry, or you know, you've got some maybe some high-end appliances like some of the Viking appliances or one of those other type expensive brand appliances in your kitchen. You know, if you've got these types of things on your homeowner's insurance, what kind of policy do you have? You have a reproduction policy or a replacement cost policy?
Replacement cost.
So if you got a replacement cost policy and you got a fire in your kitchen there, they're not going to replace it with the custom cabinetry and that custom countertops and those Viking appliances. They'll replace it with some off-the-shelf GE white product. That's what they call the standard products. They refer to them as white products, off-the-shelf products. A GE white product, stove and refrigerator. They'll give you some, maybe some vinyl countertops, you know, the wooden with the vinyl on top countertops with some cabinetry that's new. It's not exactly the same as what you had, but it serves the same purpose. You could prepare your food on it. You're not going to have those soft touch clothes and opening drawers in the kitchen, okay? But you'll have drawers that you could put your spoons and forks and knives in, right? So you see the difference between replacement cost and reproduction. Replacement is gonna replace it with something else that's usable, that will serve the purpose. Reproduction makes an exact duplicate.
Mm-hmm.
They'll make you whole again. They'll replace it with the Viking appliances and custom cabinetry and granite countertops or whatever your, you know, marble or, you know, concrete or whatever kind of custom countertops you get too. So they got to estimate the cost to construct the building. Then they estimate accrued depreciation because they got to factor in the age of the structure that's there too. How old is that building? How long has it been there? The building may have depreciated over time due to various factors. Depreciation is a word that means it's a loss of value due to any cause or any condition. So here's another slide for you. I'm just skipping forward 2 slides to address depreciation. So depreciation, this is actually a great slide to study from. Depreciation is a loss of value due to any cause or condition to the improvement. And as a general rule, land does not depreciate. So you can only depreciate the value of the improvement to the land. So, and that's what the appraiser is doing right here in this cost approach, right? They're going to estimate accrued depreciation, and that's usually the math problem that you guys get on state exam. I don't think we got a depreciation problem on a school exam, but I may add one since you guys get it on, since I know you get it on the state. So physical deterioration, that's one, you know, the structure is falling apart. It's rotting, the wood rots because of age, you know, it happens. Is this curable? Can it be fixed? Yes, can. Now we have functional obsolescence. Stop there. Do not read the definition, guys. Close your eyes. Tell me what functional obsolescence is. What does the word functional mean?
Something that works.
It works. And when something's obsolete, what does that mean? Because that's the root word of obsolescence, is obsolete. If something is obsolete, what does that mean?
No longer made.
It's or outdated, right? Or no longer considered desirable by today's standards. So if something's functionally obsolete, that means that it works, but it's outdated. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just outdated. No longer considered desirable by today's standards, right? And let me give you an example of something that's functionally obsolete. A 5-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Why are you laughing? You know, there was a point in time someday that you're just happy that you had indoor plumbing. Ask your cousin in Alaska.
Yeah.
Right? Some of the places up there, they don't have indoor plumbing. You gotta go outside. Yeah. That's suck in the winter, right?
Mhm.
Whew. So, and just having indoor plumbing is nice, you know, but okay, but by today's standards, she laughed, you know, but by today's standards, you know, 5 bedrooms, 1 bath, most people, they get a 2-bedroom condo, they want 2.5 baths, right? So it's functionally obsolete in that regard. It's outdated by today's standards of what people are seeking. Is it curable? Sure, you could add another bath, right? So
Yep.
you need to know this. This will be on exams. Functional obsolescence and external obsolescence. You need to know what they mean. And I just showed you how to remember it without studying it. Just say, analyze the words. Functional means it's working. Obsolescence means it's obsolete, it's outdated, or not considered desirable. So it works, but there's nothing wrong with it, but it's outdated. External obsolescence, on the other hand, what does external mean? It means outside, not just outside the property.
Mhm.
So something that's not on the property that affects its value. This is why it also goes by the term economic or locational obsolescence. Can the local economy affect the value of your property?
Yes.
Absolutely can. What are the politicians doing? What's going on in the economy? Or is everything shut down, right? Hell, we got ghost towns in the United States, right? Look at what happened to Detroit. You know, Michigan used to be what all the auto manufacturers used to be based there, right? Before they shut down and went to Mexico, you know, and then it became a big slum. It used to be a beautiful city. You know, people abandoned houses. You know, you got, you know, gangsters and drug dealers and, you know, people living in the empty homes, homeless, right? Well, guess what? You make some modifications to the politics, you make it more desirable for those companies to come back. They decide that they're going to start coming back. What's going on in those areas now? They're getting revitalized. All of a sudden, there's demand for it again because that industry is coming back. All right. Now, what happens to it under another change of presidency with totally different things? See, these are things that a lot of people don't think about, but they affect us. Now, being in the real estate business, you guys may rethink your politics a little bit when you guys start seeing how things really affect people's lives. External obsolescence, so is also known as locational. You cannot. All right. This is usually not curable. External obsolescence is not curable because there could be factors on the outside of the property that affect the value or desirability of your property.
Like
And, go ahead.
Like factories.
Yeah, like maybe you live next to a factory or something. You can't move the factory. There's nothing you could do about that. It's beyond, because of its location. There's just some things you can't change. Can't pick it up and put it in a better neighborhood, right? Or you know what? You bought a beautiful house next to a nice little park. Only now you find out that that park is contaminated with PCBs. Can you fix the problem? Probably not. All right. So these are factors that are beyond the property's boundaries that are usually beyond the control of the property owner. So they're almost always incurable. And that's what you need to know. External, also known as economic or locational obsolescence, is almost always incurable. Functional obsolescence, 5-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, you know, things like that. Are they curable? Sure. All right. Now, so then they would deduct the accrued depreciation from the estimated cost of the new building, not the land, because the land doesn't depreciate. And then they add back in the estimated land value to the depreciated building value. All right. So those are the 5 steps that the appraiser does. How much does it cost to buy the land? How much does it cost to do the improvements? Subtract from the value of the improvement for age and other depreciation reasons, and then add the cost of the building back onto the land. Boom. And that's how they do the cost approach or appraisal by summation. Obviously, there's some math involved. They're summing it up. So appraisal by summation. Often they ask which one of these approaches is also known as the appraisal by summation, cost approach. Right? So, what kind of, so last sentence in the last paragraph on this page, we're going to highlight the cost approach before the numbered list. The cost approach is sometimes called appraisal by summation. And then they got these 5 steps here in the book as well. So what approach to value is used most often by real estate agents?
CMA.
Or sales comparison approach, okay? Or comparative approach, sometimes they may call it as well. Sales comparison or comparative, they're comparing things. Which approach to values most used on residential real estate? Same one, sales comparison approach. Which approach to values used to determine the value of a church?
Cost approach.
Or a special purpose building or a unique property? Cost approach. Cost approach is also sometimes referred to as?
Appraisal by summation.
Okay, so you guys see how we go about doing this, right? All right. Now, let's highlight these things. I went over this on the slide, but let's highlight them. It's on page 281. This is on page 281. We're going to highlight depreciation refers to a loss of value due to any cause or any condition that affects the value of an improvement to real property. And then underline right after that, as a general rule, land does not depreciate.
Where's that at, Victor?
On page 281 under depreciation,
Uh-huh.
you see where it says depreciation in bold on the first line?
Yes.
Depreciation refers to the loss of value due to any cause or any condition that adversely affects the value of an improvement on real property.
Victor, I have a question.
And then immediately after that, you underline, as a general rule, land does not depreciate. Yes, what's your question?
Going back to where land does not depreciate, what if there's an oil spill?
Generally, land does not depreciate unless it's
Generally.
yeah, unless it's, that's why I say as a rule of thumb, as a general rule, you know. But, you know, there are circumstances, contamination or nuclear wastes or industrial or contamination or oil or whatever, something, you know, if that's the case, that could affect the values of the land, right?
Yeah.
A bit.
Just
May not affect the, I mean, it could still have an effect on desirability too, but look, these lands will still get used. Can you use a property that's contaminated?
Yeah.
Got to clean it first, right?
Can you give an example besides contamination as to what depreciation would be?
Well, for the land, I don't know.
No.
They're doing nuclear testing on it. It's got here's one by Mother Nature, sinkholes. You guys know what a sinkhole is, right?
Yeah.
You guys know what causes them?
No, what causes a
No.
Hmm. So now we're interested in science all of a sudden, huh? Okay, hold on.
It wouldn't it be like the breakdown underneath the ground? Like,
Yeah, it's a softer rock under the ground that gets, when it gets exposed to rain or water, what have you, it breaks down that softer rock over time. And the ground stays solid as long as that hole remains full of water. Here, let me try drawing you a little picture here to show you a little depiction here. So you got the ground level, right? And then there'll be a void in the ground. There's this softer rock over here, right? And as it fills up with water.
can't see your screen.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. You were explaining. I was like, I don't see what you're talking.
There you go.
Right.
And as this fills up with water in here, this is where the rock used to be. And this rock, you know, when it gets wet over time, the water exposure, it's like limestone, would get eaten away. Limestone, salt. You know, we've seen this happen where there's salt mines, limestone, where there's softer materials in the ground that the moisture makes them softer. But you know what? As long as the water levels stay here in the ground, you know, and this stays full, it supports the weight of anything that's above the ground here. Now, let's just say that we got a drought. Now, all of a sudden, the water levels go down. Now you got a big void here in the ground, and the water pressure that was holding up the ground before, that from the dissolved rock, is no longer there. So all this starts come crashing down to fill the hole. This is very common in Florida, but you see it a lot. You see it a lot down south in general. Louisiana, they got salt mines, coal mines. You know, it's what happens, and then it sinks to fill these holes.
I think I may be confused. I thought like it's you do an improvement, and then how does that cause loss of value if it's an improvement?
Oh, well, we're talking about here about loss of value to land. People were asking because as a general rule, land does not depreciate. So the question was here, how does land depreciate? Other ways, you know, we talked about, well, it could be, there could be an oil spill or some kind of contaminant, chemical. But I just gave an example of Mother Nature can create a loss of value to this land, because look, if this happens,
Are you talking about like when you do like a remodel?
No, this is.
No. I was talking about.
Yeah, that's.
I think she's talking about when we said before how if you make improvements on your house and you were saying you do too much, you're now going to devalue. You're taking away because you're not going to make the money that you put into the.
Okay, well, no, that was something we spoke about earlier. That's
what she was talking about.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with depreciation. That's increasing and diminishing returns and such like that. Those are different theories. When we're talking about loss of value, the property could have lost value because of physical deterioration. But this can be cured if you do repairs. For instance, you bought a house, it's an older house. The house looks beautiful, but you can't see behind the walls and you didn't do a good enough inspection, and now you find out it had termites in it. Termites are eating away the wood framing and the walls and such. Or you had ephes stucco, and the stucco caused damage.
Okay, so then I think I'm confused on the definition of depreciation.
Okay, well, depreciation is right here. It's very simple. Can you see the slideshow?
Yeah.
It's a loss of value due to any cause or any condition to the,
Where this is the example where you gave the sinkhole.
for what? Yeah,
This
well,
is the example.
yep, because that's just another example. That's an example by Mother Nature. Because somebody was asking, because it says as a general rule, land does not depreciate. And somebody asked me, well, other than contamination from like oil spills, how else can land depreciate? Because as a general rule, land doesn't.
Right.
Well, sinkhole would be an example. That could cause it to lose value, right? Here's another one. You guys remember something that happened down in Louisiana a couple years back with the flooding?
Yeah.
The levees broke.
Levees broke. Yeah, the oil.
You know, not the oil, the water.
I mean, yeah, the water.
The levees broke, and you got Louisiana flooded. What was that? Katrina, right? Hurricane Katrina, right? You remember people on the roofs of the houses and stuff? Those whole neighborhoods. You got still neighborhoods that got old houses there that people never moved back into. You guys still got the Army Corps of Engineers doing a massive project there, building the largest concrete. They poured more concrete there than ever anywhere in any project anywhere in the world, including the Hoover Dam, you know, to build up these levee systems down there so that they're so that those lower districts, you know, that are, when I say lower, I mean physically, they're lower lying lands. And these levees are walls that were built up. Here, let's see. Led Zeppelin had a song, "When the levees break, have no place to go," and that is true, because here's the land, right? Just say land goes down. Yeah, too big of a picture. So here's the land, and then you got the lower districts that are down here, okay? And you got people all that have their homes down here. You got people with many, many homes. You got neighborhoods full of homes down here, right? And that's low-lying land. And over here, you got the water level that's over here like this. This is a levee. This is it's a man-made piece of land. This area right here. This area right here is man-made land that was built up. And it's really wide. But it holds up all this water pressure from all the water. Years and years and storms, and as the storms start beating on it, and then if the water levels go up and they go over these levees, they start to wear away this dirt until the levee just crashes and gives way, and then all the water comes here and floods all these houses out. You want to live in this low-lying area?
Negative.
No.
Hey, that's a lot of Louisiana, the whole state pretty much, but that general area over there by the shore, you know, the lower districts, the lower 9, everybody knows that, you know. District 9, that's the area that got mainly flooded out. It was that low-lying area where the levees broke like that. Well, they're doing this massive project trying to build up these levees again, this time with concrete. You know, trying to build it up so people can move back down in here again. You got people, they abandoned their homes there years ago. They never went back. Like, no, I'm not going to restart over like that. You know, maybe lost relatives, people died, you know, the flooding. That could affect your value of land, right? But as a general rule, land doesn't depreciate. But if a levee breaks, oh, that can make it depreciate. If you got a sinkhole under the property, that could sure make it depreciate. If it's contaminated by oil, that can make it depreciate. But the general rule is that does not happen. So generally, those are rare circumstances, though. Sorry, I'm just looking for a couple stories here for you. I had a couple stories here about those, about the sinkholes. That gives you a little more detail about it. Oh, where the hell they are now? All right. I may have it in my notes. I thought I had it in my my folder here, but let's see. There we go. I think I pulled one up. Let me just take a look real quick. Come on, come on. Fortunately, some of these websites protect their videos, so I can't just download them. I have to try to play them from their websites, and take a little while to load.
Are you a lender, mortgage broker,
No.
or any business owner who's wasting time, money, and resources on unqualified candidates? Welcome to Florida, the sinkhole capital of the world. It's an issue that many people never think about until it's too late. But if you're buying or selling property, well, you can't afford to overlook it. Natural sinkholes happen when acidic rainwater seeps down to the surface soil and gets to something like sandstone or limestone, which dissolves over time. And eventually, the land can't support its own weight. And it's not just Florida. Last year, 8 Corvettes were damaged after being devoured by a 30-foot deep sinkhole at the National Corvette Museum in Kentucky. Imagine coming to find that damage. Sinkholes have wreaked havoc across the country: Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Pennsylvania. Now, sinkholes don't get as much attention as natural disasters like earthquakes or hurricanes because many of them are localized. They can cause just as much damage. Florida has more sinkholes than any other state. There are more than 15,000 verified sinkholes across the state.
Florida has what people call a Swiss cheese geology. We have a limestone bedrock underneath the state, and there's an aquifer. Over time, the rock is dissolved by the acidity in groundwater. It creates caverns and voids that when the surface can't support it, they collapse.
A few months ago, this Florida sinkhole reappeared 2 years after it opened up under the bedroom of a 37-year-old Jeffrey Bush. He was sucked tragically into the 20-foot sinkhole with his entire bedroom, and he died before he could be rescued. I'm standing by Lake Rose in Winter Park, Florida. It's named after May Rose Williams. Her house was here until May of 1981 when the ground opened up and swallowed it. What happened here, which is now all water? Tell us the story behind it, please.
May says she was looking out her window, saw a sycamore tree in her front yard disappear into the ground, and she realized that there was trouble. It took with it a 3-bedroom home, a luxury car dealership with about 5 Porsches and a truck, half of the city's Olympic-sized swimming pool, a portion of the street, and caused about $4 million worth of damage.
It grew to 320 feet wide, 90 feet deep, and even became a tourist attraction until the city filled it in.
Florida's laws changed in about 2011. It was in response to what was seen as runaway abuse of insurance when it came to sinkholes. Insurance companies were paying out hundreds of millions of dollars in claims and taking in a fraction of that in their premiums. So the legislators responded, they changed the laws, and now a lot of people think that the pendulum has swung way too far in the other direction because sinkhole claims are incredibly hard to make.
Florida state law requires insurers to cover catastrophic ground cover collapse.
And those are the really extreme cases that you hear about, and there's 4 criteria for that type of coverage. You have to have an abrupt collapse of the ground, a depression that is visible to the naked eye. You have to have damage to the structure, including the foundation of the building, and the property has to be deemed uninhabitable, so it's condemned.
2 years ago, a 60-foot wide sinkhole opened up underneath the Summer Bay Resort near Disney World. Amazingly, a security guard heard some creaking, saw a window break, and the building was evacuated before it all collapsed. Outside of that, sinkhole damage is not covered unless your policy specifically includes it.
They can offer it, but they don't have to provide it. And that typically comes at a higher premium, which is prohibitively expensive for a lot of property owners.
A lot of states, you have a disclosure form. Is there a statement on there, has there been a sinkhole problem?
Yes, so on residential disclosure forms, you'll find this most typically. It will have whether you know of any sinkhole activity or whether there's any reported on your property. But Florida statutes require a certain level of disclosure from sellers as well. So if you've made a claim to your insurance company and your insurance company has paid that claim, you have to disclose that fact along with how much of that money you spent to actually repair the sinkhole damage. I always encourage people who are purchasing a piece of property to look for that specific disclosure. And if it's not provided on the forms you're given, to mandate that the seller tells you whether they know of or have reported any sinkhole activity to their insurance
Now, not
company.
so much of a problem here in New Jersey,
A federal grand jury
but we could
recently
see it in all
convicted a Florida
states.
couple of wire fraud for pocketing a $153,000 settlement and then quietly selling their home.
They made a claim, they were paid on that claim, and then they only made cosmetic repairs to the home, sold it, and didn't check the box that, yes, there has been sinkhole activity.
So if you're representing the seller, what would you be telling us, their lawyers, to what they should do?
During a due diligence or inspection period phase, anytime you're going to purchase a property, you want to first make sure that there are sinkhole disclosures in any of those closing documents that you're going to have. You want to also make sure that your property is even insurable. Make sure you can get coverage, especially when you're in those areas that have these high rates of sinkholes. Sometimes mortgage lenders will require that an inspection is done on a property, but that generally isn't performed by a licensed geologist. It's typically by contractors that they've hired. So you can have other types of testing done, but that can be prohibitively expensive. If you make a claim with your insurance company and they send out somebody to inspect the area, and if they find sinkhole activity, that engineer's report is going to be filed in the county clerk of courts. So you can find those on a title search or a public record search, whether there's been any filings against your property, because it is tied to the legal description and the owner's name, whether there are sinkhole claims that have been made and how much has been paid out on it.
So a buyer in their due diligence should probably get either a capable lawyer like yourself or do some due diligence, get the title report done from an escrow company.
Absolutely.
Make sure you understand what's going on the property, what the history is. So if you're going to go in and buy,
Correct.
you have the knowledge and you have the risk.
Yes, you want to get on top of property insurance, title insurance. That way you can find out what type of risks that you're going to undertake when you do own this property.
All right, interesting stuff there about sinkholes. All right, on how they could affect the value of your property. You've seen a situation there where the guy died. You know, it's the bedroom collapsed in the house. The whole family was sleeping. You know, the last thing family members heard is this guy was screaming. You know, his brother rushed in from the next room. The bedroom was gone. You know, so yeah. It could affect the value of the property. That particular property was condemned and it was torn down, and so were the neighboring properties because the ground was found to be unstable, opening up again a couple of years later. So that's but as a general rule, that doesn't happen. You know, that's an oddity. Okay, so generally land does not depreciate, but there are circumstances where it can. All right. Still with me, guys?
Yep.
All right.
Yes.
Yes.
What's that? Okay. Now, the income approach to value. It's based on the present worth of future rights to income, used for valuation of any property that generates income. That makes sense, right? Income approach is used to determine the value of any property that generates income. So what kind of properties generate income? Well, rentals, right? Apartment buildings, office buildings, shopping centers, multifamily homes. And the way that they determine the value on these types of properties is using cap rate. Well, actually, we didn't do the highlighting here on that depreciation stuff. Let's finish up with the highlighting. On page 281, guys, highlight the title physical deterioration, and then the word right below it, curable. And then next to number 2, we're going to highlight that first sentence there. Functional obsolescence refers to this physical or design features that are no longer considered desirable by property buyers. And then highlight the word curable. And then number 3, we're going to highlight the first sentence there. External obsolescence, also known as economic or locational obsolescence, is caused by factors not on the subject property, so therefore it is almost always incurable. Back on page 280, the previous page here, where I'm not sure if we highlighted it yet or not, but reproduction costs, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And replacement costs, let's highlight that there. Reproduction cost is the dollar amount required to construct an exact duplicate of the subject building at current prices. Replacement cost of the subject property would be the construction cost at current prices of a building that's not necessarily an exact duplicate, but serves the same purpose, is functional to function as the original.
Victor, where is that one at? The very last one you
On
said?
page 280, you see reproduction cost in bold.
Yes.
So highlight that to the end of that paragraph, because you have both reproduction and replacement cost definition there in that paragraph. And then turn to page 282. and highlight the income approach or income capitalization approach to value is based on the present worth of future rights to income. Makes sense? Now, the way they do this, well, they figure out the gross rental income on the property. They deduct their expenses from it to get their not the gross, but the oh geez, gross operating income minus gross operating expenses gives you the net. There you go. Gives you the net operating income. And once you got the net operating income, I'm going to give you a formula where you could figure out the value of the property. Okay, now go down to the fourth bullet point under income approach. And on the second line, it says this is done by highlight estimate the rate of return that an investor demands on an investment of capital. Then go to the end of that line and continue highlighting rate of return is called the capitalization or cap rate. So in the income approach to value uses one of the following two methods: cap rates or capitalization rates that measure the rate of return of the investor's money. Cap is short for capitalization rate. It's a measurement of the rate of return on the investor's money. And you would use the T formula to calculate it. So in the margin to the left of where it says capitalization rate there in the book on 282, and they give you a little formula at the bottom of the page there, but I'm going to give you an easier formula there. It basically says the same thing. You're calculating it the same way. It's just easier. Just write, use T formula to calculate. And then I'm going to give you that T formula in a moment. Actually, I'll give it to you right now. I'm going to go to this whiteboard and show you what to write there in the margin. You're going to write use T formula to calculate. Use T. Oh, sorry. Using red ink here. Let me clear that and redo it in black ink in case somebody's colorblind. Use T formula to calculate. Sorry about that. And then you're going to do this. You're going to draw a T real big like that. And you're going to do this. What symbol is that? That's division, right? And then up top, you're going to write net annual income. Property value. And cap, which is a percentage. Oh, and do this too. Sorry about that. That's a multiplication, right?
Okay.
And I give you a little acronym to write here too. TGIF. And that's not just party time. And that's not just a good place to eat.
It's terrible to eat.
Yeah, like that steak. Good, steak is good. So TGIF, you know what that stands for? Top number goes in the calculator first. Top number goes in first. So basically, if you got this formula here like this, here's the formula. It's a T. That's why they call it the T formula.
Uh-huh.
TGIF, the top number, that's whatever number's here, goes in first in the calculator when you're dividing, and you divide down,
So we can't.
figure out the missing element. Okay, so TGIF, it's the net annual income. If you're trying to figure out what the cap rate is on a property, you would take the net annual income, put that in the calculator first, hit the division symbol, and put in the property value, and you'd get the cap rate on the property. Or you could put in the net annual income divided by the cap rate to get the property's value. Or you could take the property value times, as you can see right here, times the cap rate will give you the net annual income. So you need two of those three numbers to figure out the missing component, basically. And I'll have that in another slide that's coming up too. I'll have it clearly written on another slide. So you got to have the GOI, that's the gross operating income, showing you some terminology that we use in real business here. And then the GOE is the gross operating expenses. You subtract the expenses from the income and you're left with the net. So how NOI is calculated, you take gross operating income minus gross operating expenses, and you're left with the NOI, net operating income. Or you could do it just this way: income, expenses, net. Okay. But for some reason, in real estate, we always refer to it as GOI, GOE, NOI. Okay. At least the agents that are into these commercial properties or income producing properties. A lot of residential agents, they don't use this terminology because they forget all about it after they get their license. Well, look, you could get people who are buying fixer-uppers. You could get people that are buying rental properties, multifamily, four families, and they want a property that's going to yield them a certain return on their investment. You get an investor that comes into the office and says, "Hey, listen, I want a property, but it's got to get at least it's got to get me at least a 7% cap rate. It's got to have at least a 7% cap on it." And if you look at them like they got three heads, you know, they're not going to do business with you. So you got to know how to calculate this stuff. You will get you'll get them for exams. I don't know if they're going to give you a math problem for cap rates. I know they do for brokers. For salespeople, they usually give you the GRM math problem rather than the cap rate. But for cap rates, we should still know the term. A rate of return on an investor's money is called cap rate or capitalization rate. It measures the rate of return on the investor's money. And you need to have a couple of figures in order to calculate it, and the coming slide will show you how. And then the next thing is the gross rent multiplier. This is another way to determine the value of income using the income approach to value, either cap rates or GRM, just two that we're going to need to know. This one you usually get a math problem on, but it's super easy. So the gross rent multiplier is used to determine the value by comparing two or more similar income generating properties. But the properties have to be, you can only compare apples to apples, so to speak. You cannot compare a 4-unit building to a 5-unit building. You can only compare a 4-unit to another 4-unit, a 5-unit to a 5-unit. You guys got me there?
Yep.
All right. So a multiplier is an insignificant number. It's not like a cap rate, which the higher the cap rate is better for the investor. It's a higher rate of return on their money. Multiplier in the GRM It's just an insignificant number that's used to compare two things. I'll show you how to do the math on it to figure it out. And I'll show you how it can be useful for you to know how to do this math. You're going to use what's called the reverse T formula to figure out the GRM. So on the next page where it says gross rent and income multipliers, next to the title, I want you to write use reverse T formula. Now this reverse T formula, the only math problem that it would be used on would be to figure out the GRM. And you need any two of the following three items to figure it out: the gross monthly income, the value of the property, or the multiplier itself. And pretty much like it's similar to this cap rate here, this cap rate T formula. This is the reverse T formula. It looks exactly the same. It's a T. You got the division symbol here. You divide down, multiply across, works the same way. Except on the top, you're going to put the large number, which is the value of the property. Down here is going to be the gross monthly income. And on this side is going to be the GRM, which I am going to say is not a percent. It's not a percentage. It's a whole number. And it works the same way. TGIF, top number goes in the calculator first. So write that in your book there along the side there, or you could wait till the next slide that's coming up that'll have this whole formula written there. Okay, so I'm gonna change back to the slideshow now. If you didn't get it all, don't worry, it's gonna be coming up in the next slide. You can grab it then. Okay. The GIM, you're not going to use this at all ever, probably. You're definitely not going to use it on exam. Probably just see it at the end of this chapter in the questions. The GIM is basically the gross rent multiplier plus adding additional revenues from other resources like sales concessions that don't come from the real estate. Okay, other revenues that aren't coming from the real estate. All right. Now, before we get into that T formula, which is the next slide, I believe that's coming up after this, let's highlight another term here called reconciliation. On the next page, 284. We're going to highlight the term reconciliation. If more than one of the three approaches to value are applied to the same property, that's reconciliation. Now, which approach would you use? Well, you would use the most profitable approach to value. All right. So here's once again the three approaches to value. Which approach to value would you use for a multi-family house? For a, let's just say a two-family house.
Income approach?
Everybody agree with that?
Sales comparison approach.
I got two different approaches here. One said income, one said sales comparison.
What was the example again, Victor?
You got a 2-family home for sale. Which approach to value would you use?
So
Okay.
comparison.
Did you use two?
One person said sales comparison, another said the income approach. Well, neither one is wrong. The 2-family house generates income. So basically, you're going to do both approaches to value and see which one would be the most valuable, most profitable approach to use, and then you go with that one. That's called reconciliation, when you apply more than one of the 3 approaches to value on the same property. Okay? It's called reconciliation. That's always on exams, that term, this definition. Okay, here's your cap rates and all your GRM, and here's the math and how to. I put together in a beautiful slide for you, nice and neat, right? Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful?
Snap a picture.
You can snap a picture of that. That is a wonderful slide I made for you guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, basically got the, but you see here, in this one, I put large number up top, gross monthly income, large number up top, small number on the bottom, and the multiplier on the other side, which is not a rate, okay? It's the gross monthly income. The cap rate is the regular T formula where the small number's up top, okay? When calculating cap rates, the annual net operating income goes up top. But why do I also have written here small number? Well, because this cap rates, this T formula can be used to figure out a couple things. It could be used to figure out commissions. It could be used to figure out cap rates. It could be used to figure out a couple different types of problems. Whereas the gross rent multiplier, the reverse T formula is only good for figuring out the gross rent multiplier, the GRM. And you always get a math problem of this on the state exam.
I have a question. How would it be reversed? Like, are we multiplying first?
Well, no. You'll be given 2 of the numbers, and you got to figure out the third. Just hang tight. I'll show you by doing an example, by doing math problems. I'll show you. Okay. All right. So, well, here's an example of a math problem that they could give you. Cap rates for the math. Before we do that, it's probably easier if I just pull up a slide and give you and show you how to do some of these problems.
Yep.
Let's see, calculating cap rates. Here's more cap rates, Boop, 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 boom, cap rates.
One of them said cap rates up top.
Did it? Cap rates and GRM, there we go. La-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee. It's a cap rate problem. Okay, we got a couple different kinds of problems here. I want to show you how to do it on your commission first. All right, so we're going to put one off to the side, dealing with your commissions. Okay. Hold on. T formula, commissions, math, how to calculate commissions. Maybe that's it. No, that's not it. Math depreciation. Okay, here we go. Let me just rename this one. Shit, where the hell did we go? Oh, man. Here, oh, all right, here, let's just make up a problem real quick here. Okay. Damn. I don't want to do this. I got a bunch of the problems that are already typed up. That's depreciation. See my absorption. Shit. Sorry, guys. Trying to locate the right math problems here. I got a couple good ones typed up already.
Victor, quick question.
Yes.
Last day of class, are we doing like a review?
I don't know. It depends on where we're at. If we finish everything or not.
You know what?
If we finished everything in it before then yes, we could do some review. But if not, then we'll just finish up the content of the class.
Okay.
Expire, need to close.
Do you think you will, since we're on chapter 16?
I'm sorry.
I said, do you think we will since we're on chapter 16?
Yeah, we're almost done with 16. We got 17, 18, which 18 is pretty much a story. There's not much in chapter 18 that's new. 19's got a lot of stuff that we need to know. 20 we already did. And so 21. So we got 4 chapters left. And how many days you guys got left here?
2 days.
Yeah, 2 more. 4 chapters. We'll be all right. Commissions. All right, hopefully this is it. I don't know. Depreciation, cap rates, and GR. Now, I'm going to draw up a problem for you right here. So let's say your commission, let's say you get a problem like this. A house sells for $425,000 and the realtor's commission or I'm going to say and the total commission is $19,125. What did the listing agent charge the seller as a listing fee? All right, so basically we use the T formula to figure this out.
Four and a half %.
Well, how do we figure this out? What's the numbers that we fill in here?
So the
Divided
value.
19,125 by 425.
So 19,125 goes here.
Mhm.
And the large number, 425,000 goes here. So this TGIF, top number goes in first, right? So 19,125 divided by 425,000 gives you, somebody said it before, 4.5% or 0.045. Okay, you guys know how to turn this 4.5% into a whole number? Take the decimal point, move it 2 spaces to the left. So it'd be 0.045, and you get rid of that. Okay, same thing as 4.5%. Okay, now you could test this math to make sure it's working correctly by, I could ask you this problem. If I asked the question this way and said, if a property sells for $425,000 and the total commission charge was 4.5%, what was the total commission collected?
19,125.
Yeah, you multiply across 425 times 4.5% would give you the missing component here, 19,125. And look, it works this way too. If the total commission collected was $19,125 and the real estate agent charged 4.5% listing fee, what did the property sell for?
425.
So you use the T formula to plug in the numbers. And you see, it's real easy to figure out when you got this T formula. 19,125 divided by 4.5% will give you the missing component over here. That would probably be the hardest way that it could be worded too, right?
Mm.
If the total commission collected was 19,125 and the listing agent charged 4.5%, what did it sell for? Okay. So if you got that asked to you as a question, you know, you got to draw that T formula, know where to plug in the numbers. The small number goes up top, and 19,125 is a smaller number compared to the value of the property, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the commission, the percentage or fee goes on the other side. All right, and remember, divide down, multiply across. It's an easy way to check your math too.
Mhm.
So I showed you how to use the T formula for calculating your commission.
Mhm.
Now, what if we get a math problem that talks about calculating cap rates? So here's one that says, if the property's, let's see, if the property's asking price is $450,000 and it's a 4-unit building, has 2 2-bedroom units and 2 3-bedroom units. The 2 bedrooms are renting for $1,200 a month each, and the 3 bedrooms are renting for $1,500 a month each. You know, what would the cap rate on this property be?
Mm.
What would the cap rate on that property be if the total expenses, we're not going to go through adding them all up right now. We really don't have the time for that. But here I gave a bunch of examples. If they throw in a mortgage, by the way, you do not calculate that. You don't factor in financing charges, because the finance charge, the mortgage fee that one owner pays versus the next owner, is going to be a totally different number. So the cap rate would be totally different for these people. So you don't calculate the mortgage. You don't factor that in as an expense when calculating cap rates. So you take the gross operating income just by adding, there's 2 2-bedroom units. So 1,200 times 2 is 2,400. 1,500 times 2 is 3,000. Add that up, it's 5,400 a month times 12 months, and your annual income is 64,800, right? That's your annual income. But that's the gross. So we put that here. We need to figure out the net, because the net goes on top of this T formula. So we had to calculate all of our expenses over here, add them up. The easiest way to do this is make them all annual, and then just add them all up, and then subtract your expenses from your income to get your net. And then you plug that number in the top of the T formula there. And you know the asking price is $450. So based on that, what would the cap rate on this property be? 38,980 divided by 450,000 would give you a cap rate of 8.6. And if that buyer was asking, that said that they would buy this property if you got at least an 8% return on their investment, well, this one gets it. Right? Is there ways to increase that cap rate other than raising the rent?
Mm.
You could try to lower some of these expenses, right? Maybe put a little sweat equity into the property for the miscellaneous repairs, do them yourself, you know? Snow removal, 300 a year. I'm sure if you take a couple bucks off of one of the tenants' rents for having and buy a snow blower and have them do that every year for you, I'm sure that they'll be happy to do it, right? Plus, that's kind of cheap. Landscaping, having them cut the grass and take out the garbage or whatever. There's ways to cut back on the expenses that could give you a higher return. The cap.
Mm.
All right. So on the same property, what is the GRM? Well, it's the reverse T formula. We put the value of the property up top and the gross monthly income here, which we already have, right? 5,400. We just plug those numbers in there. So 450 divided by 5,400 gives us a GRM of 83.33. Is that good? Is that bad?
No.
It's just a number. It isn't good or bad. Okay. Cap rate, the higher the number, the better. GRM, the number means nothing. So why do we figure it out? Well, let's just say that another property comes on the market for sale and we don't have all the figures on it. Let me stop this share for a second so I can erase some information here so you guys can do some math. All right. Now, we figured out the cap rate for this property in this neighborhood, and we figured out the GRM for that same property in this neighborhood. Oh, damn it. But another property came up on the market for sale. I don't care about the asking price because we're going to make an offer price. If we want to get the same cap rate that we did on this 4-unit building, on another 4-unit building in the neighborhood, but this building is 4-unit as well, but this one has 1 2-bedroom and 3 3-bedrooms. How much should we offer on it to get us the same approximate cap rate? Now, this isn't an accurate number. This is a spitball, get us in the ballpark figure number. What we do is we take the GRM that we figured out in this area, because this is for the same neighborhood. Can we agree that 4-family homes in the same neighborhood should probably have, give or take, approximately the same income and expenses on them?
Yes.
Yeah, they should be close, right? Obviously, this is not accurate, but it'll get us in the ballpark with the figures. So we got a property that's on the market that we don't know what any of the expenses are because they didn't list it. We don't even know what the rents are because they didn't tell us. You know what? They didn't even tell us the rents. So how do we figure this out? Well, we know that on this property, we'll figure out that it's an 83.33 GRM. So let's write that down over here. And we know that in this neighborhood, that 2-bedroom units are renting for $1,200 a month each. They probably go through that in the whole neighborhood, not just that building, right? They'll be close for 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, right? And this one's got a 3-bedroom for $1,500 a month. Okay, so there's only 1 2-bedroom here, so that's the 1,200. So we're going to times this by 3 because there's 3 of these. What's 1,500 times 3?
4,500.
Okay, let me pull out my calculator because we're going to do a little more math than that.
It's 4,500.
Yep, 1,500 times 3 is 4,500. Then we add that up.
It's 57.
That's 5,700. Now we plug this number
Do the-
in the bottom.
Right.
This is the reverse T formula, right? It's the same formula we used here. This is the gross monthly income. Now we just take 5,700 times 83.33. And how much should we offer on this property to get us that same cap rate ballpark figure range?
475.
Close. If you're going to go exactly, it's 474,981.
Oh, I forgot to use the rate. Yeah. 475.
It's not a hard problem, is it? Hell, this one you don't need to know expenses. All you need to know is the monthly income. You know how they'll try to make this hard on you? They'll probably do this. If they give you a cap rate, by the way, I just showed you how to use it in real life. How this could be useful for you in real life when you don't have all the numbers on a property. How you could figure out what it's worth.
Okay.
Based on how much money that the buyer wants to earn off of it. Okay, you got to have one property in the neighborhood that you got all the figures for, figure out the cap rate on it, and then you could figure out what the GRM is on this property really easy, right? Because GRM is a reverse T formula, value over monthly income. You don't even need to know the expenses. We'll give you the GRM. And then that's a 4-unit building, so you could use that number to compare it to other 4-unit buildings. And we did we have any of the expenses? We didn't even have the rents here. We just guessed at what the rents are approximately, right?
Right.
And that put us in the ballpark of what we should offer. And that'll probably get us in that same cap rate area. Now, a way that they could make this harder on you is they could ask you, what is this? Oh, that's a different problem. They could ask you if they could give you the annual income or something like that. And then all you got to do is divide it by 12 to get the 5,700 and you'd put it in there. Because remember, when calculating GRM, you got to use gross monthly income. Let's do another math problem here. If a 4-unit building is generating 6,200 per year in income and has 28, yeah, here's an example of how to do that.
So you'll put 425 on top.
Yep. The reverse T formula, large number always goes up top. So if a 4-unit building is generating 6,200 per year in income and has 2,800 in annual expenses with a monthly mortgage payment of $2,400 and the realtor charges 6% commission, if the property sold for $425,000, what is the GRM? This problem gave you a lot of information that you do not need.
Right.
So what do we need to figure out the GRM? Gross monthly income and
the value.
And the value. So we already got the value, so we plugged it in there. So what's the income on this? Let me see. 4-unit building generating 6,200 per year in income and has 2,800 annual expenses. We don't need the expenses. If it's 6,200, if it's 62,000 a year that it's earning, just divide that by 12.
So
that gives us 5166. Right? So now we just put 5166 here. That's your gross monthly income. So $425,000 divided by 5166. The GRM is what?
82.26.
82.26. Or 28 if you wanted to round it, but yeah. Not hard, right? If you know what numbers to plug in. So you got to learn those T formulas that I taught you on this slide. All right, let's continue. I want to finish up this chapter. So I got some of these math problems on this slideshow too, if you guys wanted to go over them again and see some of these examples that I have here. I built them into the slideshow here for you. Okay. I gave you the problem, and then I showed you how to work it out. I gave you quite a few of them, as you can see. Give you the problem, showed you how to work it out. All right, now, here's a little harder problem. But before we do this, let's go to the bottom of page 285. The next to last bullet point. You see where it says Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, USPAP?
Oh, wait, 285, what was it?
Yeah.
The bottom of the page on 285, the next to last bullet point.
Yes,
On the second line of that bullet point, it says Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, USPAP, USPAP. Okay. And then highlight that. And then then turn the page to 288. Everybody on page 288?
yes.
Third paragraph, second line, third paragraph, end of the first line, highlight MAI, member of the Appraisal Institute. MAI, member of the Appraisal Institute. All right, now, what is this? Well, MAI is members of the Appraisal Institute. When you guys get your real estate licenses, you guys become members of NAR, National Association of Realtors, right?
Yes.
Appraisers become members of MAI, member of the Appraisal Institute. Now, when you guys become realtors, members of the NAR, National Association of Realtors, they want you to finish your Realtor Code of Ethics training class. You got to do that within, I think, the first 60 days of you joining the Realtors Association. Well, appraisers have an annual class that they have to do. We have to do that every 3 years now, whatever it is now. Appraisers have to do a USPAP, USPAP, Uniform Standard of Professional Appraisal Practice. So what the Realtor Code of Ethics is to us, USPAP is to appraisers. And what NAR is to us, MAI is to appraisers. Make sense?
Yes.
So I don't think you need to memorize what these things are, but if you see that term, MAI or USPAP, USPAP, as long as you know that it has something to do with appraisers, I think you'll get it right on exam. But usually you're given one or the other of these at least on state exam. Now, on the bottom of page 288 here, or halfway through it, there's different appraiser license types. Usually on state exam, they'll give you a question. What kind of license is required to do an appraisal? Your answer should be what?
CMA.
It should be an appraiser's license, right? Now, if they ask you if they're more particular about it, the answer is probably going to be this one, certified general appraiser. For whatever question they give you on the state exam about what kind of appraiser license is required. Well, if they say what kind of appraiser license is required to do an appraisal, you just say an appraiser's license, okay, any of them. But if they're more particular about it, there's different types of appraisal licenses. You got first off, you start off as an apprentice trainee. You got to take a 90-hour class and pass a state exam in just the stuff that we covered in this chapter. That kind of material. And then you're an apprentice trainee. Then you could go back after working under a licensed, one of these other license types as an apprentice trainee for a period of time. You could go back to become a licensed residential appraiser. But you're going to have to take another 150-hour class and pass another exam. After you have 2,000 hours of experience under your belt with, in being an apprentice trainee for at least a year. And then you still can't appraise properties on your own. You still have to work underneath one of the certified types of licensees. Now, a certified residential appraiser can only appraise residential properties under $1 million. Now, they can appraise commercial property and land, but only if they're working under a certified general appraiser who can appraise anything. Because remember, the term general is a wider scope, right? So a certified general appraiser can appraise any type of property with no monetary caps on it. So usually they'll give you a question on state exam about that. They try to trip you up. The answer is usually general appraiser, whatever they give you. So you're going to get a question on this, and you're going to get a question with one of these. And you see that down on page 288, towards the bottom. The next to last paragraph, you know, both licensed and certified residential appraisers must pass examinations and may conduct appraisals of no more than $1 million. Highlight it. In the meantime, but they could also only appraise residential property. I guess the title there, certified residential appraiser, kind of gives it away, right? Or it should. All right. So let me back up here a little bit. Why do people get appraisals? Well, here's a bunch of reasons. And these reasons can also be listed here on page 285. When somebody dies for estate purposes, for divorce proceedings, right, to divvy up the assets, for financing when you're buying real estate, right, you need to get an appraisal done, for taxation reasons. The assessed value ad valorem means that the property's taxed according to its assessed value. For relocation purposes, when relocation companies will sometimes purchase a property, they need an appraisal and know how much it's worth. For condemnation, anybody remember what condemnation means? It's the process of seizing a property through the courts using the government's power of eminent domain. For insurance reasons, you may need to get an appraisal. Or for damage, loss, for tax deductions, or for feasibility studies that governments do. These are all situations that would require appraisals getting done. All right, how do real estate licensees value properties? Well, we do a CMA. That's a comparative market analysis. That's probably nowhere here in this area, probably from other chapters. Comparative market analysis We use it to help buyers determine the offer price and for sellers to determine their listing price. Brokers' price opinions we do for banks or lenders sometimes, but remember, never call it an appraisal. We always got to have a disclosure on both our CMAs and BPOs that it is not an appraisal and should never be considered as one. All right. All right, then I just got a laundry list of math problems here for you at the end. But there's one more math problem I wanted to go over with you. It's this one, and then we're done with this chapter. So let's just hang here just a little while longer. We got 2 more minutes, but it's just going to take a little more than 2 minutes. Let's just finish this up, okay? When calculating value using the cost approach, this is a problem that they usually give you on state exam, and it's probably one of the harder math problems that they give. The first step is you have to determine which method to use, and they'll tell you that in the math problem itself. They'll tell you to either use the straight line method or the compound method. If they don't tell you, then you're going to use the straight line. Straight line method assumes each year's appreciation or depreciation is a percentage of the original value of the property. Let me go back and forth between the whiteboard here. Come on, whiteboard. So on the whiteboard, as you can see here in front of you, you get a question like this that says, you purchased a property 3 years ago. You purchased a property 3 years ago and it depreciated. What is depreciation?
Lost value.
It's a loss of value due to any cause or condition. Very good. So it depreciated in value 2% per year. If today's value is $400,000, using the straight line method, how much did you buy it for? So you would do this. If you're using the straight line method, it's really easy. It's how many years times the rate of depreciation. 3 times 2 is 6. And it's a loss of value. So when determining a value, we're determining 100%, right? So we're subtracting 6 from 100%, which gives us 0.94. And this is, and then there's only one step. It's $400,000
Times.
Hold on a second. If we're trying to determine a value in the past, we're going to divide. So this is what the second, or actually what it says down here in step 3 here. To determine value in the past, we divide, no matter if the property appreciated or depreciated in value. If it appreciated or depreciated in value, that just matters whether we're going to add to 100% or subtract. If it depreciated, we subtract. If it appreciated, we add. But we know today's value is 400,000, so we're trying to figure out what we purchased it for. So determining past values, we divide. Determining future values, we always multiply. So we're going to do 400,000 divided by 0.94.
425,531.
Divided by 94% or 0.94. What'd you say? 425, 531?
Yes.
Yep. 425, 531.
And that's what we bought it 3 years ago.
Yep. And we know that this is right because it should have gone up in value, because we bought it 3 years ago and it depreciated in value. So if today's 400,000, we know we bought it for more because it depreciated, it lost in value. So we know that this is a higher number. So we know that that's probably the right number. If it's a lower number, we know that that's not right. Yeah, just because common sense. Forget about math, common sense, right?
Right.
Now, if they didn't tell you to use the straight line method, if they told you to use the compound method, it's a little bit different. So in the compound method, we do this. It depreciated 2% per year. So we're subtracting 2% from 100. And then we're going to do this math problem once for each year that it depreciated.
This is the compound method?
This is the compound method. So we know today's value is $400,000. We're trying to determine a value in the past. So once again, we divide, because that you divide when you're figuring out a value in the past, by 0.98. And then you take that answer, divide it by 0.98 again. Take that answer, divide it by 0.98 again. And you get the final answer of 424,993. This is when you're using the compounding method. So you do the math problem once for each year. But if they don't tell you specifically to use the compounding method, if they don't specify in the problem what method to use, you're going to use straight line. If they tell you to use compounding, then you do this. Don't multiply the number of years by the percentage. Skip that part. You just go, so you subtract the depreciation from 100, and then you do this step for each year. Make sense?
Yes. Okay. For each.
So on the slideshow, I go over that instructions here, but if that's not good enough, look, on the next slide, I give you the math problem and I show you step by step what I'm doing. You determine the value based on 100%, okay? First step right here. Determine if you're using straight line or compound method. If it doesn't specify, like in this problem, you're gonna use the straight line. Take the number of years times the rate of depreciation. But if it's a compounding method, like problem number 2 down here, you're gonna subtract from 100%, and then you're gonna do the problem once for each year. Okay. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is probably the hardest math problem you get, because and it's not hard. It's just that there's a lot of steps that you got to remember.
No, that pity is hard.
You think the pity was harder?
I did. But I'll figure it out.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So look, I got a couple problems here, and I got it on another slide where I break it down again in each step like this, you know. So on this slideshow, I have a lot of samples of the math problems, and then you go to the end of the slideshow, and I got it broken down again, a couple more samples, calculating depreciation, straight line, compound again. I give you the breakdown with the question. So the T formula again, I give you the breakdown with a bunch of examples. Okay, so the slideshow gives you a lot of those examples too. Reverse T formula for figuring out the GRM and how you would use it in real life. And that's it. So let's do the key terms to review, and then we're done with chapter 16. Which, guys, listen, there, you get a little bit of math from this chapter, obviously. This is probably the chapter that we had quite a bit of math in, or different kinds of math. But there's a lot of terminology there. Study the terminology, okay? Look, on your state exam, you get 8 math problems total. Your school exam, you get 4. You could get every single math problem wrong as long as you get all the other stuff right, you'd be good, right? So you sweat math. Listen, still study it. These problems aren't that difficult, but get down at least the terminology, all right? So let's do the key terms to review 1 on page 290. You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Analysis of income, including rental and other factors.
GRM.
The gross,
Gross
and other factors. Income from the rent and other factors like concession stands. That would be the gross income multiplier, the GIM. See, I told you, you're only going to use this in this here. GRM is for state exam. GIM, you're never going to get again. So 10 is A. Analysis of rental income used roughly in sales comparison approach.
Rent multiplier.
That's the GRM, gross rent multiplier. 11 is B. Use of land that yields the most money. What do we call that?
Highest and best use.
Highest and best use.
Yep, highest and best use. 12 is C. See, these are the terms you need to know. Appraisal technique that analyzes the cost to build.
Cost approach.
Cost approach. 6 is D. Analysis of value of property using return of the investor's investment.
Cap rate.
Mm,
Wait, the return.
Income approach.
analysis of value of property using
Income,
return
income
on
approach.
Income approach. Oh, okay.
Income approach.
It's an income approach. 13 is E. Extra, but I could see why you got that, why you jumped there. Look, we've got like 13 multiple answers here, so I could see. So extra that contributes to owner's satisfaction, clean air, view, and so on. Jacuzzi.
Amenity.
Amenity. 1 is F. A loss of value due to any cause.
Depreciation.
Depreciation. 7 is G. A loss of value due to factors beyond the property's boundaries.
External obsolescence.
8 is H, correct. A loss of value due to worn or outdated features.
Functional.
Functional obsolescence. 9 is I. Process of estimating value.
Appraisal.
It's an appraisal. 12 is J. A rate of return demanded by an investor in a particular area.
Capitalization rate.
That's the cap rates, correct. 4 is K. A similar nearby property recently sold.
Comparables.
It's a comp. 5 is L. And an independent person trained to provide an unbiased estimate of value.
Appraiser.
They're an appraiser. 3 is M. Okay, key terms to review, part 2. Analysis of values received by different appraisal approaches. Say reconciliation or reconciliation. Sorry, I'm mispronouncing it. Reconciliation. You're reconciling your accounts. Reconciliation. 4 is A. Cost to rebuild using using materials like the original.
Reproduction cost.
You're reproducing it. 6 is B. A cost to rebuild using today's materials and techniques.
Replacement.
5 is C, replacement cost. What a property actually sells for.
Market price.
1 is D, the market price, which is the selling price, right? A location and the buyer's willingness to pay more for a certain location. 8 is E, situs or situs, situs. You're gonna sit us right here. Loss of value due to worn or outdated, loss of value due to wear and tear.
Physical deterioration.
Physical deterioration, 3 is F. Parcel of real estate being appraised. What do we refer to that as?
Subject property?
It's the subject property, right? The subject of our conversation. 9 is G. Present worth of future benefits can also be described as
Value.
Value.
simply value. 11 is H. Price that would be paid by an informed buyer based on supportable evidence. They're informed.
Value.
Market value, 2 is I. Principle that no one pays more if the same can be had for less.
Substitution.
10 is J, substitution. An appraisal technique that analyzes the sale prices of comparable properties.
Sales
Sales
comparison.
comparison approach.
7 is K, sales comparison approach, correct. And that is it for today. That concludes chapter 16. We banged it all out in 4 hours. That's pretty good. And we had a little review there at the beginning. Actually, 3.5 hours, I think we did it in, huh?
Victor, what was 9? I just missed 9.
On which one? Key terms 2? Or 1?
1.
In key terms 1, 9 is I.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, you guys are waiting around for a poll?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Night.
Okay, have a good night.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everyone. Have a good weekend,
Have
everybody.
a good weekend.
Good
Okay,
night.
bye.
All right. Bye.
Good night.
Riley, you're great.